what the Super Bowl represents and why we always hear people complain about the bad.
Well, I've got a couple of things. You talked about this off that people to discredit. And, I'm not into organizing either. You're not going to hear people talk about this kind of stuff in most churches or other houses of worship. They're not going to talk about, the reality of, the spirit world, per se. So, I would point out the Westboro Baptist Church, the group that would picket funerals and they had this whole, super anti-gay messaging and if somehow they had the money to just go wherever they please. They could go overseas. They could, go to all these events. They had a lot of money to just be, in the media all the time. And it turns out that Fred Phelps, who was the alleged pastor of this church, he was like a civil rights lawyer. He was a Democratic activist, and he ran Al Gore's 1988 campaign in Kansas. So it's just so blatant, And as soon as he dies, the whole operation gets shut down. So, that was just so clearly.
Does the PSYOP control opposition?
Yeah.
Dude, that makes sense. That totally makes sense.
Yeah, because where did they get the money? Because you always saw them all over the country, just constantly inserting themselves into the news cycle with their placards and so on. And, that's just nonsense.
Where do all these people get their money? Antifa, the people coming from Guatemala for the caravan. Where do they get the fucking money? It's Soros. It has to come from somewhere.
Soros.
Well, it's Warren Buffett. It's Bill Gates. It's the whole system. It's the whole program.
Basically, anybody the media is telling you is a good guy billionaire. That's my opinion. If the media tells you they're a swell billionaire, know that dude is up to some shady shit, in my opinion. That's just me.
Well, just before the whole COVID, Gates came out with this whole COVID program. The big thing that he was doing before that was using Marina Abramovich to promote his virtual reality boondoggle. I'm a huge skeptic of that kind of virtual reality. It's been, the next big thing for 30 years, and it's never really come to pass. But anyway, so that was the big thing, was, Marina Abramovich and, using her, and then there was, the whole big blow up, and then they just completely scrubbed everything from the internet, any of the ads or, any of the stories, anything that would mention that they were using her, on the cusp of this whole public relations program for the COVID thing. But you want to talk about the Super Bowls. If you've got a little time, I'll tell you a little story. Katy Perry did the Super Bowl thing in 2016, and she comes out, riding this giant metallic lion, and this gold lion with the burning red eyes. You want to look that up. And then she also sang Firework, and she was shooting around the stadium in or something. And then she did this whole dance with the sharks. She's doing this whole line dance, sign up the beach and so on. And she's in a bikini and she's dancing with sharks. But 2 days after that Super Bowl, there was a woman in Westchester County who was incinerated when her car was struck by the Metro North train at the Gates of Heaven cemetery in Valhalla. And the story was very strange because this woman, the gate came down when the train was approaching, and it landed on her hood, and she couldn't figure out how to just back up and get out of the way. So what she actually did when the train was getting near is that she drove onto the tracks, and the train just smashed her, and she was literally just burned alive, and a number of other people on the train were as well. Well, it turns out that this woman who was killed was Hillary Clinton's father. and her name was Ellen Brody. So when you think about like this Katy Perry show on the Super Bowls, this is just pure coincidence, I'm sure. The firework, baby, you're a firework, baby, you're a firework, and then Dancing with the Sharks. And if you know anything about the movies, Ellen Brody was the name of Chief Brody in Jaws, the movie Jaws.
Oh my God!
Yeah, she had the same name. So,
That is crazy.
Yeah, it's just absolutely insane. And it's Valhalla, and it's interesting because that same week, they had opened, somebody had opened like a Norse temple, and in maybe Iceland, I think, and they also called it Valhalla. So you have this sort of twinning of Valhalla and this, the cemetery, the Gates of Heaven cemetery in Valhalla. And this woman who, I don't know. I mean, maybe some people would think she was being mind controlled. Why did she back the car up? Why did she drive it onto the tracks? She's suicidal. So, and
That
she was
is
Hillary Clinton's
crazy.
private jeweler. Yeah, it's
Could be sacrifice. Could have been a sacrifice.
Well, it's during the primaries. It's during primary season. It's during the election and so on. And Katy Perry, who's a whole other story. I mean, that poor woman has just been. She's been played every which way. She's a mess. It's really sad, I think. But
Religion
she was.
always ruins great rap. We all agree on that. Either way, dude, whether you're the forces of light or darkness, it always messes with a great rap. And that's all I gotta say. That's my political statement for the day.
But she I think you're probably right, but she was really heavily involved in the Hillary Clinton campaign, and just the fact that she comes out, like the biblical whore of Babylon, the woman drunk on the blood of saints and riding the giant beast, into the stadium. It was like really, I mean, 2016 you saw a lot of super unsubtle symbolism, but that was also the Super Bowl where Pepsi was doing all the UFO stuff. And they were, their whole ad campaign was, really involved with, this UFO symbolism. It just seemed really random and so on. But, Hillary Clinton, right around that time, had made an announcement up in New Hampshire, opened the files on the UFO issue and so on. And, of course, we saw this past summer, Ghislaine Maxwell, who was living not far from where Hillary had made that announcement, was friends with Hillary and was friends with Chelsea. And she was arrested on World UFO Day. It's like such a strange thing. Like, what was she doing up in New Hampshire? And she was like, I don't know, 40 miles north of where Aleister Crowley had spent, the summer with this famous astrologer before he did the Amalantra working, and that's the working with the gray, the figure he drew that was the gray alien. It's just like, what are these people doing? And then it turns out Ghislaine Maxwell has a familial connection to Jack Parsons because one of her sisters is married to the partner. The son of the partner of Jack Parsons, who started JPL with him, Ed Molinos. So, you peel back the curtain on these people, they get very, very strange beliefs. They really do. I mean, it sounds like, fundamentalist hysteria from the 80s, but they're becoming more and more open about it, which is kind of concerning to me.
Well, my whole thing is that, and I get in fights with everybody all the time, they're like, oh, you don't talk about the Jews. I go, because my belief is that none of the major religions that you see outside of Catholicism, but, Judaism, Islam, Christianity, I don't think they're the run-ins. I think those are masks that people use to walk amongst us. And as you're talking about Ghislaine Maxwell being into this, like, darker, like, it totally fits into what I believe that, like, behind closed doors, they're into the occult. That is what they believe in. They only use the other religions so they can walk amongst us. Because if we really knew what they were into, we would lose our skulls on them. They would be like, "You're into what?" But behind closed doors, they're all into the super dark occult stuff that is slowly but surely being pushed out. And I just think that the internet has changed the game, in my humble opinion, and that, what was told to me a long time ago is now the masses have the knowledge of the elites. And for the longest time, we didn't have this knowledge, and they would just put all the symbolism out because nobody knew what they were talking about. And they would do it with a smile on their face, smirking the whole time. And now it's like over this last 3 or 4 years, where the game is completely flipped, in my humble opinion. But they can't get out of this behavior because this is kind of how they've been raised. This is kind of how they've been programmed. This is what we do. We put out clues. We do this. Is it sigil magic? I always pronounce that wrong, but sigil magic, right? And that's kind of what they do, man. I just see that happening all the time. Symbolism and what we hear is always going to be their downfall, in my opinion.
Or it won't be. I mean,
or it won't be.
Yeah, I mean, these a lot of people you're talking about might be implying about. I mean, they hold all the cards. I mean, let's take Mike Bloomberg. So Mike Bloomberg built this huge empire based on these these news machines, and it was something to do with stock prices and something. These little kiosks that he installed everywhere. So Mike Bloomberg built his headquarters in London. And for some reason, he felt the urgent need to take an excavated Mithraeum, which is a temple to Mithras, which is essentially Saturn, and put it in the basement of his new world headquarters. Why was that so important to him? Why was that so important to take, the Mithras temple and put it in his building? Like that it belonged to him. This was a temple that had been excavated during the 1950s. Well, it's important because if you understand the symbolism of Mithras, you understand that the Prometheus statue at Rockefeller Center is Mithras. It's not Prometheus. It's only Prometheus in the fact that some people in late antiquity, sort of combined them. They did this all the time. They're constantly switching up gods and switching their identities and so on. And somebody, had identified Mithras with Prometheus. But when you look at that statue, it's a classic Mithraic icon. Right in the middle of Rockefeller Center, which is, one of the big. I would argue that was the capital of, the American Empire until David Rockefeller died. And I think a lot of the stuff that's going on now has to do with the fact that, he's dead and all his lieutenants and princes are all fighting with each other about, which one is taking the throne. But also, the Statue of Liberty. People think the Statue of Liberty is a woman. Have you ever gotten a good look at that? How can you look at that statue and say it's a woman? It's just unbelievable. It's actually, it's a classic, based on classic depictions of Mithras, holding up the torch. But the thing is that so the Mithraic mysteries, the Mithraic cults, they were like Freemasonry, so they had degrees. And the second degree was called Mithras Nymphus, and you had to dress. These initiates would have to dress up as brides, and they'd have the tiara with the sun rays. Exactly like what you see in the middle of New York harbors. It's like, how do you know? Look at that statue. That's a man dressed, in this ritual garb.
Yeah, the Statue of Liberty is the number one trans symbol in the world, everybody.
Wow.
The face is a dude's face.
It's face with that nose and everything.
It is a
structured
guy's face.
Yeah, so look up the Statue of Liberty replica at the Brooklyn Museum, and then you'll really get a good idea.
How do you spell Mithras?
Mithra. The Brooklyn Museum has a replica of the Statue of Liberty. Have a good look at it. Maybe show your
That's so incredible, dude. That is so incredible. Yeah, man, I've been watching a lot of people talk about the Statue of Liberty. And there's like other Mithras, like statues.
Yeah, see that image right there? Just zoom in on that image right there. And you'll see you know, what the story really is, I guess.
Tell you about our good friends at Mac Weldon. That's Mac Weldon. Mac Weldon is better than what you're wearing right now. That's right, comfortable, high quality clothes, the best in the game. They start from scratch and engineered their own fabric. They were making designs processed meticulously so you can count on the fit being the same each time. They built a world-class customer experience. The difference is in the detail. They are obsessed with every stitch and seam until they reach perfection. Okay? Mac Weldon is the premium men's essential brand that believes in smart design and premium fabrics. Mac Weldon is indeed offers the industry-leading underwear. But they are much, much more than just an underwear company. They are the one stop for all men's basic kinds of needs. Okay, basics of all kinds for you. And Mac Weldon will be the most comfortable underwear, socks, shirts, undershirts, hoodies, and sweatpants that you will ever wear. Okay, I've ordered some shirts. I love them. I love underwear. Johnny, you need new underwear. Guess what? Guess what you guys get for Christmas? Do you celebrate Christmas, Johnny? Or are you
Absolutely.
stuff?
No,
Okay?
I absolutely celebrate Christmas.
Okay, then you're going to get a pair of sweet-ass underwear for those giant balls you
Love
have.
Christmas. I love Christmas.
And you love your big balls, don't you, Johnny? Okay?
Yeah, the whole world does.
Yeah, who doesn't, Johnny? Who doesn't? Now, here's the thing about Mac Weldon. They have created their own totally free loyal program system called Weldon Blue. Okay, level 1, give you free shipping for life. Free shipping for life, man. And once you reach level 2, by spending $200, Mac Weldon will give you $20. Who else does that? Who else does that?
Whole year,
Nobody.
20%.
20% for a whole year, okay? That's why we love it. All right, so here's what we're doing, dude. Basically, what you need to do is visit macweldon.com/tinfoil, okay? And get 20% off your first order. Oil guy, okay? That's all we need you to do, all right? Just help us out, help the show. Go to Mac Weldon, that's MacWeldon.com/tinfoil and use the promo code tinfoil. Enjoy some sweet-ass underwear, sweet-ass shirts, okay? Make yourself feel like a king. Do that,
I mean, that version of Mithras Niftis doesn't even have like the fake breasts like the one New York Carpet does.
Oh, shit, it does.
But also AT&T. I mean, AT&T, who were once the the Bell system, and they were the monopoly. They controlled all the telephone circuits in the entire country, and they were broken up by Reagan. But now they're slowly but surely rebuilding themselves. But their corporate symbol is also Mithras. It's winged Mithras. And they just replaced the snakes that were wrapped around this is what I'm trying to say. Is this like, if you want to look that up, just look up AT&T. I think it's called like the Spirit of Electricity.
Oh my God! I mean, we see a lot of this stuff. A lot of these corporate symbols having a lot of cult symbolism. Nike is basically Nike swoosh is basically the ring on Saturn. That's what It's like.
So you're looking at the AT&T statue right now. I mean, that's exactly a classical Mithras depiction. All they did was just replace the snakes. What's that?
What was Mithras the god of?
Well, he's supposed to be the god of time and of contracts. And then he was also a solar god. But he was a solar god, but he also represented Saturn, because Saturn represented time. So it's
Kronos, right? Is that Kronos?
Kronos, yeah. So, but this is the thing that I've been talking about, is that these gods, they all got mixed up. There would be, just even in ancient Egypt, you would go to say a temple and it'd be Isis, Osiris, and Horus, and then you'd go to another temple and it'd be like Ra, Hathor, and Ra Junior. Basically, I mean, they just totally would just switch up the identities. There was no canon. There was no home office that were just handing out the instructions. So things would get very confused.
Johnny, I love that you brought up the god of contracts. It's like, I am the god of contracts. Initial here, and initial here.
Thank you, God of Contracts, for the Mookie Betts deal. We appreciate it very much.
So I want to get into, award ceremonies and Burning Man, and then I want to talk a little Chris Cornell. So where do you want to start with that?
Well, since we're sort of on the tail end of that, I mean, we can talk about, again, the things that I've been talking about, where they're using all the symbolism. And a lot of times it's, they're very clever with it. Sometimes we'll see, like, Nicki Minaj a few years ago had done that whole, the devil's after her, and, the flames, the dancing demons and stuff. And, that stuff was, it was very blatant. Anybody could see, understand what they're looking at. But then you talk about, like, the Lady Gaga thing, or the halftime show. But also, Lady Gaga had done at the Grammys a couple years ago, and she had, like, the wings draped over her piano. So that's more of that fallen angel symbolism. She's almost like a paper doll. She'll wear anything you want, that they want her to. She'll put on it. She'll do like she's amazing. I mean, she's such a trooper. She'll participate in any ritual.
She wear meat on her face, looking like the bloody face. Oh, so that was another thing. So the bloody face that people are talking about from the Frazzle trip. That is also on
the volleyball,
which is also on Ellen's shirt, which is like
used for the Trump face too.
And it's also one point. Yep. And then there's also something about like a red like face. I mean, handprint on your face is also something like that, which I saw blatantly out of nowhere on Impact. Like, holy shit! They didn't even hide it. It was like, boom, and then they all ha 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 ha, and I'm like, man, they have zero problem putting this cult symbolism into this show, man. Yeah, she wore the face that was like the rest. That was her costume after the award show. And I'm like,
this is 12 years ago actually. I wrote a piece called The New Normal, and it was talking about all these kind of things that were percolating in the underground and percolating amongst these kind of cults was eventually going to reach the mainstream, because that's the way it always works. I mean, things percolate among these groups that are influencers of type, because they always sort of catch the ear of celebrities and politicians and whatnot, business people, people who are rich and powerful but extremely insecure, right? So this stuff eventually it seeps up, and since there is no mainstream culture, there's no mainstream, there's no center. You can't be a centrist because there's no center, right? Mainstream culture is gone. Everything is very fragmented and decentralized. So in that kind of environment, you don't need to worry about these parents groups that are going to protest, or these Christian groups that are going to protest. So you can really just basically do anything you want, because you've got so many people that are so well entrained, your little, amen corner on Twitter or Facebook, who are so well entrained to just, anything that you do, no matter how insane or provocative, is great. And anybody who dares criticize you is like alt-right or QAnon or, what other kind of names they just want to throw at you. They just, these kind of things that they just dream up just to discredit you. But like, where is this going? It's going to like, I'm just really concerned, because I'm just seeing people more and more acting like somebody from a horror movie, like, somebody from like a movie about somebody who's possessed. People are just acting like. For instance, that woman who threw the dog at that guy. I'm sure you've seen that video.
Yeah.
That was so frightening and disturbing. That woman, she didn't blink. Her eyes were like open the whole time, and her pupils were just—they couldn't possibly be more dilated. They would have disappeared. And then, like, she's being so cruel to this little animal, and it's demonic. It really is. And you see, like, a lot of these people involved in these protests, they don't have a political agenda. They're just there because they know that the system gives them permission to, be antisocial and violent. And
it's a rich kid's purge, in my opinion. The movie Purge, we're allowing rich kids to do that. So you brought that up earlier about that guy eating the hard summoning. It's like we just did something on Aleister Crowley. It's like it's these rich kids that don't have life, for the lack of better words. Sorry about this, fucked out. Like it's like very early on I learned, man. It's like the way I wanted to see the world isn't the way the world works. And I learned it the hard way. But here I am, have a better understanding of how the world works. A lot of these kids, including Aleister Crowley, that doesn't happen to them. They get juiced into these private schools. They meet all these powerful kids. They all grow
Ce faci, mă? Tu te joci jocul ăsta? Tu te joci jocul ăsta?
Nu, stai că eram derutat că mă suna și pe telefon și pe calculator.
Uită-te pe... Am găsit un joc ca lumea, că tu te jucai Counter-Strike. Ăsta e ca Counter-Strike. Nu, dar e mai mișto. Nu, dar joacă-te doar puțin să vezi cum e. Te joci cu mine aici.
Nu mă, George, ascultă-mă, nu mă mai jucat Counter de o grămadă de ani și
nici eu.
Mă uitam până anul trecut la seriale, le-am văzut pe toate și anul ăsta n-am văzut nimica. S-a schimbat sistemul de total.
Da, mă, da, clar.
Deci eu n-am mai văzut seriale, vikingi, alea, tot, nu, nimic.
Nu te-ai mai uitat.
La nimica, nu știu, totul mic s-a axat pe cum să supraviețuiesc.
Și eu la fel, nici eu nu m-am jucat, mă, acum de 2 zile. Am băgat jocul ăsta să văd cum e, că am văzut pe YouTube că se jucau ăștia.
Da, n-am mai băgat nimic, nici seriale. Uite, azi am ieșit la o cafea cu...
Uită-te pe Facebook, uită-te pe pagina mea de Facebook, să vezi cum mă joc, cum e jocul un pic.
Nu mă uit, eu nu mă joc.
Nici eu nu mă joc. Vreau doar să-i împuși pe ăștia. Îi împuși pe ăștia.
Fundamentalist drama queens and so on. I mean, I was right there when all the people were saying that.
Nu la modul să cumperi PS, ceva, nu,
nu, ăsta e pe Windows. Ăsta e pe Windows cu BlueStacks. E de fapt pe Android.
Am înțeles ce ești tu. Nu mă joc, eu nu mă joc jocuri deloc. În afară de alea care mă jucam când eram mic, Counter-Strike și Delta Force și nu știu ce m-am jucat acum, care era în 90 și ceva, 94. Alea, Counter-Strike și Delta Force când erai tu la sală atunci.
Da.
Ăla de m-am jucat și eram la sală și jucam nopțile, dar am jucat la profesioniști. În rest, eu n-am mai jucat altceva alte jocuri. Eu când jucam Counter-Strike, atunci când mi-ai dat tu mie capac unde mă duc eu seara și mă jucam la jucam Counter-Strike la profesioniști.
Eu nu eram acasă.
Ba da, bine, și eu mă jucam, îmi luam nopțile, că jucam, făceam antrenamente cu echipele. Eu am jucat în liga profesionistă a jucătorilor.
Păi de-aia vreau să... Știu că mi-ai zis, de-aia vreau să te joci.
Da, am ajuns acolo, eram în grupa C. Eram bine, în fine. S-au dus jocurile alea, erau jocurile copilăriei.
Păi nu, ăsta e de fapt un joc pe Android, care e la fel ca Counter-Strike.
Dar eu nu mai mă joc acum, nu mai am de joacă.
Știu, nici eu. Bine, mă, hai, vreau să mă joc cu tine, să vedem dacă vrei să ne împușcăm.
Nu mă joc.
Ba, uită-te la mine pe pagina de Facebook.
Nu, nici atâta nu pot să mă.
Uită-te numai 5 minute.
Mean words and violence are never the answer. Because those are literally the only two real world consequences that hurt them. If you've been insulated your whole life and somebody says something mean, that feeling hits harder for you than a guy who does roofing for a living, got the shit kicked out by his dad his whole life, sticks and stones, you know? But when you've grown up in,
Absolutely right. Not
virtual signaling going on to a greater group that they're part of the group and you brought up something earlier, this people want to be right instead of doing right. And so they just really hunker down on their position. I can't tell you how many people I know in my own life, in my profession, that are like huge Me Too advocates that are straight at the same time telling everybody that cuties is okay. That like the notion of like sexualizing grown women in the workplace is the most offensive thing ever. But sexualizing children in entertainment is like whatever, stupid guy. And it's all this edgelord shit. That they do it it's in theory. They sit there and they say the craziest thing because it's so edgy. Because they're all rich kids. I'm so edgy. And then when it comes to practicality, they run like children and cry when it's actually implied in real life. It's unbelievable. They'll say the most dangerous things, right? And then when there's repercussions for that, they just go and lock them. They set their Twitters to private, their Instagrams to private, because they're afraid of the replication. It's like I said, why do rich kids or the political correct people say that mean words and violence are never the answer? Because those are literally the only two real world consequences that hurt them. If you've been insulated your whole life and somebody says something mean, that feeling hits harder for you than a guy who does roofing for a living, got the shit kicked out by his dad his whole life, sticks and stones, you know? But when you've grown up in posh everything, in the best hospitals, the best homes, the gated communities, private schools, Ivy League schools, words hurt. They hurt.
It's not only rich kids, though. It's the fucking politicians. How about Kamala Harris, the VP?
Well,
What happened to her and Biden?
She's feeding into it. That's what they do. They add gas to the fire because they know there's these kids out there that feelings hurt. Like politically incorrect jokes are only wrong if it's geared towards the left. But if it's geared towards the right, it's perfectly acceptable. If you want to rip on somebody's religion, rip on their love of their country, rip on their whiteness, it's fine. You pick on somebody being gay, a woman, ethnic, all of a sudden this is the worst thing you can possibly do in the world, and we have that. It's why Johnny and I were talking before the show. It's why Saturday Night Live is falling flat on its face right now, and which hurts me because I have two good friends on there, and I want them to make a ton of money following their dreams. But that show is only playing to one side. Jim Carrey trying to act like Joe Biden is anything other than shit his pants, fucking crazy person. It makes the whole sketch fall flat because it's not common sense. But
well, you know what a lot of that is, and this is something that's been going on for a long time, and it sort of starts in these sort of corners, these lower rungs of the media and so on. There's increasing competition for slots. Sure you know this on a show like Saturday Night Live, and the ratings just continue to go down. And it's not just people turning it off because they don't like the politics of the show. It's people turning it off because it's either not funny or there's other things to watch that they would rather watch. But the other thing that happens,
I don't know what happened. Either they didn't read the mission statement or something, but it just blew up in their face to the point that the NBA finals ratings were the lowest in the history of recorded finals, which means now the ESPN has to cut all of these jobs now because they're not going to be able to pay for everything because they didn't meet their numbers. And they're just, and like, it's like, I always say, it's like, people, when the political statement is something that you agree with, you don't see how damaging and dangerous it is. But I always go, let's say instead of the NBA players, right, or a talking head on ESPN, let's say it's your waiter at a restaurant. And you go to this restaurant, you're eating, and this waiter can't stop telling you her political or his political beliefs. At some point, you just want to eat a meal. You don't want to have to hear what these people think. And that's what's happening with entertainment. Back in the 50s, when, you had Jim Brown, Muhammad Ali, you had Bill Russell making political statements, 50s, 60s, 70s, okay? That was being done because nobody was talking about those issues. So they had to make a stand right there. But even when they made the stand, when they showed up to the game, they played the game. Now, it's everywhere.
Everywhere, not only go vote, it's just not go vote. Back then, when I just turned 18, it was like, just go vote. Everyone just go vote. When Obama, they weren't really pushing Obama, they were like, just go vote. Now you can literally tell you what they're doing. They're telling you not to vote for Trump, and if you're going to vote, only vote for this, and if not, then don't go vote. That's literally what it's saying.
Well, it's funny too. Like you have a lot of these so-called nonpartisan organizations like that in the Get Out the Vote effort, and they're all they're all run by Hollywood liberals. Like HBO has produced a couple of shows. One of them is the Golden Girl special, and another one they did a reunion of the West Wing cast with Aaron Sorkin. And they did a stage reproduction of one of the episodes, and they pretend it's a nonpartisan thing, but it's just the biggest. It's a joke. They're almost a parody of themselves at this point.
Where's
so
BLM right now? Oh, yeah, it's gone because it's hurting Joe Biden's campaign. That's why you don't hear about it anymore. It's just like, go on, sir. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, look at Hollywood. So Hollywood is collapsing quicker than anybody would ever have imagined. Particularly anybody who hadn't been sort of paying attention to the fact that they will make
us not have the control the narrative anymore because you watch that. They did that study. Women are 70% of the purchasing power. They have the same 70% of all purchases, and therefore, the news realize that, the mainstream media realize that, and they're like, okay, we want to ratchet up all the race tensions, but if we piss off white women, which there are more white women than any other demographic in the United States, and more money spent on white women than any other demographic out there, if we piss them off, we're going to lose their purchase power. So we got to come up with something that kind of fractures them from white guys, and that's 70 cents of the dollar. Grand with that. Oh my God, that we're just getting into the fight here. They just don't understand that actually have to do with stay-home mom, or wants them to move to, North Dakota. I'm not going to move.
Leave for 9 months?
Well, what's so funny is like Bill Burr brought up, how come nobody's ever talking about why there's not more women in roofing, right? Like, you don't hear women complain about getting into roofing all the time. They're not represented in that. So the rise of the Karens, they want to protect white women. That's how you would be pounding on white guys, but somehow white women be like, yeah, you guys suck. And you're like, you're right there with us. So the rise of, now, once the mainstream media starts to die, all of a sudden you see all these, like, social media, funny-ass websites making all these funny videos. So I think the woke society, I think it's going to die off, personally, because now you're going to be able to select more of what you're watching. But it is right when you're talking, it's going to fracture us more. Now they talked about how Game of Thrones was the last cultural event we all watched together. And after this, now it's like, oh, I'm on Netflix, I'm on Hulu, I'm on Amazon Prime, I'm watching this thing, I'm watching that thing, there's no, one thing we're all watching. And I do think that's going to lead to everything being fractured. And you heard Jeff Bezos put out an email to his employees that he wants a diverse workforce because he's going to ratchet up the tension so they never unionize with each other. Because white employees and black employees, male employees, female employees, gay employees, right? They're all going to be fighting with each other constantly and not coming together, like kind of on what's going on in the United States. Dude, that's
legit.
Our diversity is our greatest strength, and they've completely weaponized it and made it so we're all fighting with each other.
Well, that goes back to Rome. I mean, that's the divide and conquer method. Rome was exactly like America is today. I mean, America is no longer a country, right? And we have military bases of 150 countries around the world. So, yeah. So, we are Rome. But the interesting thing, so Rome had, the bread and circuses, that they had huge numbers of people who were either unemployed or underemployed or just poor. And how do you keep them from rising up and overthrowing the ruling class? Well, you give them free food, and you also give them these entertainments in the Colosseum and so on, the races and the gladiators, and that's our modern version of that is football. So you talk about Game of Thrones being sort of the last water cooler television show, the one that everyone watched and talked about on Monday morning or whatever. But football was also like that, I would argue, and certainly the Super Bowl, because people know I talk about the game at the time of the ads and so on. So all these things, they're killing the beast that laid the golden egg. They're shitting in their own bed when you really get down to it. When you inject all this woke stuff, it turns people off. I mean, it turns people off who would not necessarily agree with your politics because it gets so extreme and gets so obnoxious. So the other thing that would sort of unite the populace would be like, Star Wars and Marvel superhero movies and Batman movies, just these big budget popcorn movies that everybody would go see and everybody would be able to, you'd be able to talk to somebody. So you go into another city and there's somebody that you've never met and they're a different race. They might not even be like native English speakers or whatever. Just somebody from an entirely different sphere of living than you are. You could say, hey, well, how about that Avengers movie? Oh yeah, the Avengers movie, that was great. You can have a conversation about it. That's they're destroying. It's like they're shitting in their own bed, and it's very hard for me to figure out what the end game is. But I would suspect that the end game is that the masters of the universe, so to speak, the people in the corner offices and the big boardrooms. I think they've lost the plot. I think they're starting to lose control, and they're only worried about just filling their own pockets, and by extension, creating very unstable political and social situations. And but the sort of salutary effect of this is that you have a populace that's just ripe for insanity and drug abuse and human possession. The big three.
I totally agree with that. I think the only things that Noam Chomsky calls them the masters of mankind care about are gods, gold, oil, drugs, slavery. That's the real money. You don't hear a lot about that. They don't talk a lot about that. Everything else is disposable, and they just kind of take turns with what company's going to jump on the sword. So you'll have Nike. Nike took a giant hit with getting behind LeBron James and all the Colin Kaepernick and all that stuff. Huge losses.
No, I don't think so. They would have supported them only questioning about food. I think they knew where to go. I knew where the market is.
Dude, for what they were doing, there's not enough black people in the country to keep their profits up at that number. It's in the their quarterly reports came out. They're down. Look at YouTube, man. YouTube, everybody wants to act like it's a business. It lost $80 billion when they changed their algorithm so people couldn't see conspiracy videos. But they're still doing it. But that's what they do. So that's my opinion. Why all of a sudden out of nowhere Yahoo articles started popping up. You're like, where did Yahoo? Like it's this zombie news company out of nowhere, and it's like because they know that brand is dead, but they can use it to put out information that the other brands will retweet, and so when people get mad, they'll get mad at Yahoo, and they don't lose any money.
Well, and the funny thing at Yahoo is just all aggregated content. Almost all of that shit on there, when you go back to Huffington Post. What's going to happen when eventually there are no sources of original news? There's nobody doing news.
There's always been tinfoil hat, brother.
Right, exactly. But what's going to happen when there's no legacy media left? What's going to happen to all these brands? I think we're looking at a domino situation somewhere in the near future when the non-corporately owned newspapers go down. There's just going to be nobody left doing investigative.
I agree.
Well, companies like Google and Facebook, they're talking about these programs. We're going to just shovel all this money into all these dying media groups. Look at, you mentioned Jeff Bezos. Look at the Washington Post. The Washington Post was on its deathbed, and nobody wanted it. And he sort of swooped in and bought it and uses it as, the way Randolph Hearst used his papers. It's just a bullet pulpit for his views that he could just have other people speak for him. So I think we're going to see a lot of that. We're going to see a lot of these big tech monopolies buy up some of these branded media outlets. They'll probably buy up Time Newsweek, and just the bigger brands. A lot of the big media conglomerates that are having their own problems. But the whole system is just so whacked out because I've always seen consolidation as just being a real problem, because it's like you put all your eggs in one basket, and that's basically what the economy's becoming. Instagram and WhatsApp and all these other sites are owned by Facebook now. What happens if Facebook goes? It all goes. But like I said, I think that a lot of this stuff is driving a lot of the things that I've been talking about on the blogs. It's driving a lot of just the extreme behavior, the ritual behavior, because ritual behavior really exists to ease anxiety. I have OCD, so I understand that you do all these sort of ritual behaviors. Like the famous one is like the hand washing or whatever. You do that because it gives you something to focus on that's going to sort of ease that anxiety, this free-floating, baseless anxiety that you feel. But I think with the ritual behavior, it's like they know that they're doing bad things. They're fully cognizant of that. They sort of shop around, for these gods or cults that will make them feel better about doing bad things, sort of give them permission. And then they pump that symbolism into the media. It's really amazing. And sometimes it feels like I'm living in you guys know Jack Chick comic books? Do you remember those Jack Chick comic books from the 80s? Oh, so Jack Chick was this Christian fundamentalist, real extreme. You should look them up because they're really entertaining. But, it would be like, if you play Dungeons and Dragons, you're going to go straight to hell, because you're going to end up killing people and stuff. Which, funnily or not, a lot of people who do role-playing games have actually killed people, and the killings have been sort of inspired by their games. I actually have a database on that. They don't really like to write about that anymore.
I'd love to interview you about that sometime, dude. I'm down with that.
Yeah, I'll have to do a book on it. There's actually a sort of a famous case. This guy from, I'm actually originally from Boston. This guy was his name Mucko. They called him Mucko, but he went into some software company and he just gunned everybody down. And it turns out that he was really into Dungeons and Dragons, and it just kind of messed up his head. So there's been a lot of these cases. But
real quick, have you found any research that correlates first shooter video games with anything going on? Because I do get a lot of crap about that. It just seems too similar to me.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the problems it's hard doing, research on that is that so many people play them, so it's just sort of the law of averages, you get somebody who's going to be involved, the Dark Knight shooting in Aurora, Colorado. It's just kind of law of averages because so many, especially young males young white males who are the primary demographic for, not the exclusive, but the primary demographic for mass shootings, they all play video games. Is there any like young white male, say under the age of 40, that doesn't play video games all the time? I mean, I can't think of anybody.
No, it's pretty legit. Like the Xbox PlayStation already sold out. They're not even out yet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and now like they're all spying on you too. Like they have all these what is it, the new PlayStation, new Xbox? I'm not sure what it was, but it's like they listen to your conversations. When you do the multiplayer online stuff, and my son used to do that, and he would just get so angry and just so pent up. And I finally just had to say, why are you doing this? You don't enjoy this. It's driving you crazy. So I think that's another thing that's driving people crazy: social media and online gaming.
100%.
Now that he mentions that, I can see that how they're listening to it and who's good at it and who's really, really upset and hates life, and then use him to go do a mass shooting.
Well, the whole thing with the FBI. I mean, the Michigan kidnap story. It's come out that guy that basically came up with the idea and pushed it on everybody was an FBI informant.
Yeah, well, that's a very old tactic. I mean, they were, in the wake of 9/11, they were, busting up all these Muslim terror gangs, and just be like a bunch of dumb guys, talking tough at the garage or something. And some guy would sort of come in, some guy who's on the hook for like kiddie porn or drugs or something would come in and go, hey, why don't we, blow up, City Hall or something. It's funny because these cases are really just created for publicity, because if you follow up on them, they almost always fall apart.
I agree totally.
It's always entrapment, and it's always just like circumstantial. It's like these cases are so weak. They just do them because that Governor Whitmer, who I talk about demon possessed. Take a good look at that woman. I mean, she looks like something from like an Exorcist movie or something. Or like The Omen, like the female remake of Omen 2 or something. She was, she had a big Supreme Court decision go against her because of her lockdowns, which was too draconian. And, a lot of people in that state really don't like her, and a lot of it has to do with the lockdowns. So she has this really bad week of all this, bad publicity sort of, sinking her career. And then magically, a bunch of guys who, first of all, they all seem from like one guy's like an anarchist, and one guy's this, and one guy's that, and one guy's this, and then
it's like the usual suspects, man. They just got together this,
they got together all the fuck ups from like this town, like tough, on social media or something, and it's a joke. It's a farce. But like the fact that they're getting so blatant about all these things, and so sloppy, it concerns me, because I think there's an air of desperation around it. It's either desperation or just a sense of total impunity. Either or, neither has very.
I think it's also that there's this non-linear warfare going on, that they want both sides to have ammunition. So, they'll put out something so the conspiracy theorists run with it. They'll put out something so these social justice warriors will run with it. And again, it divides and conquers us. I always bring up that story, the ABC interview with the teacher from the Parkland shooting. And she's like, yeah, man, this cop in full armor was going around shooting everybody. And I'm like, how does that make it to air? Unless they want that to make it to air. And now all the conspiracy theorists run away. Oh, look, it's a false flag. And then other people are like, people died. How can you say that? And neither shall the two meet.
Yeah, well, there's actually a name to that. It's called the strategy of tension. It was called Operation Gladio during the Cold War, that there was some concern that the Italian government was going to fall to the communists, and they were going to kick all the, NATO and the Americans and the British and all these other people out of the country. So they came up with what was called the strategy of tension, which would be exactly what you're saying. It's like, some outrage committed by the right, some outrage committed by the left, and, it's just ratcheting up tension in society. But, it all sort of stems back to that whole idea of divide and conquer, where if people are fighting with each other over, contrived nonsense they see in the media, they're not going to say, hey, you know what? Why is that guy making $10 million an hour and he's paying his, his workers less than minimum wage? How does that work? How is that good for us? If people are, fighting over things that they can't change, like their race, and well, I guess some people try to, like Sean King changed his race. I guess, they try to, they argue about, these just identity politics things. They're not going to get together and say, let's see about these guys in upstairs offices. They're sort of like, we have a common enemy now. And what I really saw is that I really saw this whole thing, all the identity politics and the SJW stuff, it really kicked off in the wake of Occupy Wall Street. Because what you had in Occupy Wall Street is that you did have a lot of like pretty radical people, a lot of people that you're seeing out this summer with the riots from Occupy Wall Street. But you also had like this really interesting thing where like people who are like socialists were talking to libertarians, and people were sort of congregating in these places and debating ideas, and you had like sort of that was the Ron Paul candidacy and stuff, and it started getting some attention. Like, well, maybe this right-left game that we keep playing and losing, maybe that's not the way to play. Maybe we should play a new game and sort of try a third option, try doing number 3, and that's exactly what they didn't want. So as soon as people were sort of questioning, this can't win game, all of a sudden everything's about identity politics and SJW and political correctness and woke and all the rest of it.
Yeah, I think this is man, we were going to talk about sirens and we never got to it, but man, I really want to talk about that with you. Like, I don't know how soon you come back on, but I really want to talk about that with you.
Kurt Cobain too.
Well, I mean,
Chris Cornell. I think that's like its own show, to be honest.
Yeah,
with you.
that's
Such
why
a
I wanted
huge
to
story.
do it. That's why I don't want to get into it right now. But I don't know how soon you come back, but we'd love to have you back ASAP.
Oh, I did really enjoy that. I really had a good time.
This has been a fun episode. So let's wrap this up. I'm trying to stay away from the stuff that the tech gods are going to pound on me because I've been shadow banned. I'm locked out of my SoundCloud account. Like, who gets locked out of SoundCloud? I mean, that makes no sense. Like, it won't even register. And I keep going, hey, man, can you let me in? They're like, yeah, just do this. And I'm like, I did that. Yeah, just do that. My Twitters get taken away.
Instagram's fun.
Well, it's like deplatforming is a sincere form of flattery nowadays,
I am flattered like a motherfucker.
Yeah, if they worry about you enough to throw you off their platforms, then you must be doing something right.
So how do you think this all plays out? What do you think happens next? We'll wrap it up on that. What do you think happens next?
Well, in the immediate future, I just think more of the same. It's funny. Back in March, I was telling people in interviews I was doing, I didn't think there was going to be an election. Because they were really sort of seeding the news cycle with like, oh, Trump says that maybe we should postpone it, and then we have all these problems with the post office, and then Nancy Pelosi says this, and they were dropping all these hints that they were going to sort of preempt the election somehow. And I don't know what the agenda is now, because now we have all this stuff with Biden and his stories. So I just think in the near future, I mean, everything that is bad now is going to just get a lot worse. And it's going to get, the tech companies are going to get more and more fascist and more intolerant. And it's just going to spread out. But I think that that can never sustain itself, because when you have to resort to, banning people from your platform, that shows that you're afraid. And when you start to show fear, that sows doubt. People are like, why are you afraid of this? Like, why is all these QAnon people? I mean, I don't know anybody who takes QAnon seriously. Why do they have to be all thrown off Facebook? What's the threat? Like, what are they so
That's
afraid
my
of?
feeling on flat Earth. Like,
Yep.
regardless of what you think of that, like they're like, yeah, we're gonna get rid of flat Earth videos. I'm like, why? If it's so ridiculously stupid, and that's what you believe, I don't care what people think. I really don't. I have a lot of very good friends who are flat earthers. I enjoy their friendship very much. I'm blessed they're in my life. But that's what you want to believe. I believe we live in a realm. That's my belief. But you know, if that's what you want to believe, why is that? Why is that damaging?
Media's gonna get worse. Just wait till deepfakes come out, till people start saying that's not my voice when it is their voice. Just wait, dude. This fake news is gonna get worse. Wait till I'm
I think
surprised.
that's what
Yeah.
it is. But I think that's what's coming, dude.
It's gonna
Well, can I just drop one more thing in there?
Please,
One of the things that I write about and I talk a lot about is I just think that reality itself is kind of is having a midlife crisis. I think that what we once understood is the way things, the order of things, and the way things work, and you know, A goes to B goes to C, and so on and so forth. I think that's breaking down, and a lot of people are talking about like the simulation and this false reality. You know, I would never try to define it, but you know, people a couple years ago were talking about the Mandela effect and so on. But you know, I don't think people really can put their finger on it because it's almost like it's shifting around so much that you can't really define it yet. So I don't know if it ever will be defined, but you know, I really do think that reality that you and I, you know, both you guys grew up in and I grew up in is breaking down, and I think it's because we had, like again, we had a mainstream, we had central authority describing reality to us, and reality comes from the same word as royal, right? It's like the king telling you the way things are. And when that authority breaks down, all of a sudden you start to perceive things, you start to notice things that you never saw before, and that, you know, it just keeps this snowballing effect where people just start to lose faith in the consensus reality that we're all taught to believe.
Is that good or is that bad? I mean, like if we're gonna use the Matrix, is it good that a lot of people seem to be taking the red pill, or is it bad?
It is, you know, it just is. It's going to be good. It's going to be bad. I don't know if there's anything that can be done about it. The only thing that can be done about it is if you just shut the entire internet down and just go back to like 3 channels of television and 5 channels of radio. I mean, that's the only way you can maybe not even control it, because I think these things are more metaphysical than we give them credit for. But you can probably just change people's perceptions of it. But I don't think that anything's going to change it. And maybe it's part of evolution. Maybe it's just part of something. I mean, some people think that we all died in 2012 and we're all transported to some parallel Earth, some parallel reality that's wasn't meant to be permanent. And it's that, you know, the Matrix itself is kind of breaking down. I mean, who the hell knows? But it's something that you know, I pay attention to, and I can say in confidence, you know, in a public forum like this, that I think is actually happening.
Okay, so the universe is kind of going through a midlife crisis right now, and it's trying to figure itself out. There's a lot of people across many disciplines, philosophies, political beliefs that think we're entering an age of awareness. Do you have any thoughts on that as we end it?
Yeah, I think that's probably true, but awareness is a huge double-edged sword, you know? The expression, ignorance is bliss, you know that expression?
Yeah.
So awareness, I know the sort of New Age people sort of paint it in a particular way, but again, it's going to be a double-edged sword. There are going to be good things and bad things that arise from it. But I think in the interim, there's going to be a very difficult adjustment period.
Yeah, I think that's what we're going through right now. He is Christopher Knowles. He has some wonderful books out there. Our Gods Wear Spandex, The Secret History of Rock and Roll, and he's got a new book out, which is a lot of people are talking about. One more time, can you tell us the name of that book? I don't have the notes right now.
Yeah, it's He Will Live Up in the Sky.
he will live up in the sky. And dude, I appreciate it. We were gonna talk. I really want to get into that conversation, so hopefully we can get you in ASAP to do that because I think that's a really fun conversation to have about the sirens. Thanks for coming on the show. I hope you had a good time because I thoroughly enjoyed talking to you, my friend.
Oh, absolutely. I had a great time. I want to do it again.
Okay.
Seriously, I'm probably going to be bugging you guys to get me on again.
Hey, dude, you might get hit quicker than you think because I have some slots open. Christopher, thank you for coming on. You're one for the best conversations I've ever had. And that's kind of the show, man. You come on, want to talk one thing, and then the conversation leads to another thing. And that is what the show is about. We have the dangerous conversations here, and that's what we like to do. Thank you so much again, Christopher. XG, thank you. Johnny, thank you. I think you talked 2 minutes, and I think time flew. So thank you so much. I love you, Swarm, and we will do it again soon. Take care. Have a great day. We go deep, homeboy. Aaron, open your mind. Drink from the fountain of knowledge. There's lizard people everywhere. That's the future of national marine. Wake up, Aaron.
This is only the beginning.
Dude, you just blew my mind.
Oh, what the fuck are you guys even talking about?
Global controls will have to be imposed, and a world governing body will be created to enforce them.
Hit oil hat. We go deep, homeboy. Aaron, open your mind. Drink from the fountain of knowledge. There's lizard people everywhere. That's the future of national marine. Wake up, Aaron.
This is only the beginning.
Dude, you just blew my mind. All right, guys, and welcome to Tinfoil Hat. You know I am. You know what I'm here to do. I'm here to. Okay, that haircut, you're just losing it. You got boy band's looks with boy band braids. Joining me always is my good friend. Dude, I'm not afraid to say that is a badass haircut. It is the Mexican vanilla ice haircut. My good friend Xavier Guerrero.
What's up? I actually heard you doing the rock thing on your own the other day. Sorry, it just sounded good.
I thought I nailed it. Hey, Xavier, can you tell our good friends where they can find your new hot podcast?
Right? It's called We Don't Smoke the Same. It's me, Ezo, Cairo Lebdun is the guy with the voodoo. So we go into conspiracies. It's at B-Real Studio, so we just kind of get high. We don't smoke the same on any platform, YouTube, social media, anything. You can find us.
Weed and Conspiracy sounds perfect, dude. So
Right?
go check that out.
Perfect.
All the links to everything described here are in the description, so please click that. Johnny, welcome to the show. The man, the myth, the legend from his obviously house in whatever city that is. I think that's Dublin or Chicago or maybe or Dubai. We don't know. It could be anywhere. The one and only Johnny Woodard.
What's up, buddy?
Johnny, take off that hat. There we go. Look at that hair, dude. You got Bieber
It's
hair.
long,
you got
bro.
nice hair.
It's so long, man.
Look at that. When's the last time
We
you
all
got your
got
hair
it.
cut?
Well, I cut my own hair like a month.
That should be its
2
own
months ago.
Patreon right there. Johnny cuts his hair.
We recorded a broken simulation yesterday, so get ready for that. It's on. It's
Scale
gonna.
1 to 10. How do you think it went?
I thought I was about an 8, and you were more like a 3 or a 4.
God damn, Johnny.
Yeah.
I don't know how much longer I can be on Johnny's show. It's Johnny's podcast.
We
It's called
have
Broken Simulation.
yeah, and if you want to hear it early, it's on our Patreon, patreon.com/broken simulation, unedited.
Yeah, dude, go check that out. Guys, if you want to see me live, I'm going to have a couple shows coming up. I will be live at the Cleveland Hilarities. Hilarities in Cleveland, October 23rd at 9:30 p.m. Tickets are already selling pretty quick, so grab your tickets now. Come see my friend Lou Santini and Joe Howard are joining me live on stage. And then November 12th through the 14th, I am going to be at the Philadelphia Heliums, and then I gotta add this to my. I will be in Chicago the following week. By the way, everybody, I'll be in Chicago the 21st. So I'm in Philadelphia at the Heliums the 12th through the 13th, and then I will be in Chicago. I will have that link in the description on the 21st. So come get weird, guys. I got 2 Patreons I want to tell you about real quick. I have a Patreon for Tinfoil Hat. It's Tinfoil Hat. It's patreon.com/tinfoilhat, and that is your daily dose. Last night I talked about the purge that just happened, and I do AMAs, Q&As all the time on there. So join me. It's only $5. Then I'm doing a podcast, probably one of the greatest debate shows ever. It's called Conspiracy Social Club. It's on Brian Callen's Patreon. Go to patreon.com/Brian Callen and check that out. I have a spiritual podcast. I put 2 or 3 episodes up every week on. It's on rockfin.com, which is the Netflix of paywalls. Basically, you pay 1 fee, you get a ton of premium content. My podcast is called Zero, and it is a spiritual podcast. It helps you deal with all the craziness in your life, and it helps you understand that you can change your life 180 in 365 days. You just got to change the way you think, change the way you act, and your life will change. If you want to save the world, you got to save yourself first. So go check out Zero real quick. Guys, this is a great show. We got the bad boy of conspiracies, my man, my good friend, Isaac Weissop. He's back, and we're talking aliens, so enjoy the show. All right, let's get into it. Super excited to have this guy back on. Every time he's on, we learn a little something. We just get to enjoy what we're looking at, dude. He's one of my favorite people on the planet. His podcast is called Conspiracy Theories and Unpopular Culture. Please welcome the bad boy of conspiracies, my man, Isaac Weissop. How are you, Isaac?
Hey, fellas, what's going on? My pleasure, as always, to be on what I consider one of the most dangerous podcasts, the funniest and most dangerous podcast to touch on conspiracy theory.
I appreciate that, dude. These days is the danger is a little dangerous. You know what I'm saying? Like these tech gods are coming and they're just dropping hammer on people. I feel so bad for everybody that's lost their podcast. Anything that I can do, I'm retweeting. I'm talking about it. It's just really weird. So just let you know, we were supposed to have Alex Jones on, and then I said, I'm not even gonna dance with that devil. So I'm like, who can I get on that has that just people love, and that's why we're blessed to have you on, Isaac. You always do really well on the show, and people love your topics, and so I'm thankful to have you on. You real quickly tell us about your podcast and about your book coming out.
Yeah, most definitely. Alex Jones, this is a big shoe to fill. I'll do my best. I've got this podcast, Conspiracy Theories and Unpopular Culture, as of today. Still, we'll see what happens tomorrow. But yeah, it's been going for a while because, as you alluded to, I don't get into the realm of politics because it's such a sticky mess when you get into there. Because, and this will flow into the conversation today when we talk about my book, because the theme of the recent times is defining reality, because it turns out reality isn't exactly as well defined with boundaries that we believe it could be. So the same goes with politics, right? For every candidate X theory you can come up with, I can come up with a counter theory for candidate Y, and it's just like, what a waste of freaking time this is. You know what I mean? Not to say that voting is a waste of time, but just arguing over politics. So yeah, it is. It's a little bit of wrestling, right? So I stick with mostly occult symbolism, occult ideas as they present themselves in entertainment. And I've been doing this for roughly 10 years now, written, I don't even know, 7, 8 books. And I just completed my book, Aliens, UFOs, and the Occult, Use Your Illusion 1. I'm working on the second book, Use Your Illusion 2. Obviously, a reference to the great Guns N' Roses albums.
When's Chinese Democracy come out?
That's my last book. That'll be when I bow out and get off the stage. But yeah, and the whole and there's a bunch of stuff behind that title, but the idea is that we are defining reality, and I take it a step further, and I believe that we are manifesting aliens and UFOs into our world. That's the short version. Obviously, we've got to read, a couple hundred pages to get the full grasp of what we're talking about. And I'll try to lay it out the best I can in our show here. But yeah, I've been really going deep into the UFO alien territory because to me, after all these years of researching symbolism and talking about it on my podcast and in books, all roads merge to the alien agenda.
And there's so much to talk about. What is the alien agenda? What are aliens? One of my best friends, Eddie Bravo's Convince Everything is Project Bluebeam. We've had people on here, like even flat earthers, who talk about how they believe it's extraterrestrial, meaning extra territory. So no one really has a set view of what they are. What do you think aliens exist? What do you think they are?
Right, and that's obviously a huge debatable topic. If you want my opinion, the way I see it as of recently, when you and here's why I wanted to write a book about it, because you've got to lay a foundation of understanding the history of the occult, meaning the Latin term for the hidden. It's this idea that secret societies and mystery schools have been passing down a secret knowledge, a secret doctrine, and part of this doctrine always seems to go into the idea of making contact with entities. Sometimes they'll label this as contact with the divine. Sometimes they call it the gods. Sometimes they'll call out certain deities. But the point being is that occultists, for hundreds of years, literally hundreds of years, have been in contact with these extraterrestrial entities. And I believe that, right? I don't think they're making this up. I believe it wholeheartedly. When you look at it from the aspect of, even religion, with the idea of a soul and a spirit, and something like ghost hunting, like there's something out there beyond our grasp, beyond our dimension. And when you look at the electromagnetic frequency spectrum, visible light is a very small sliver. It's a very small chunk of what the five senses can detect. And you go beyond that just a little bit, and all of a sudden you don't know what's going on. You need tools like ultrasounds and X-rays and this stuff. So yeah, I do think there's there's entities of some form. I'm more in the camp of interdimensional. I don't necessarily buy into
Me too, dude.
planetary.
That's my whole thing is that, even when you talk about the people at Google, they talk about making contact with the old ones. You have CERN. They talk about making connections with other dimensions. So, it's all there, man. It's all there, and it's just really interesting stuff because, I believe that there's been this long con to convince us that we don't live in something special, that we're not special, where we live isn't special. I believe we're the lowest level of heaven, highest level of hell, and there's this battle for it. They're trying to push a certain agenda, whether it's space, I don't know. I until I go there, I'm not going to know what exactly we live in. But
and you're not going there, right?
Well,
you're never going there. If
someone said right now, Sam, we're going to shoot you into space, would you do it? I'd be like, oh, hell no. There's no way. There's no way I'm coming back from that.
Yeah, space is terrifying.
One ticket to stupid. You remember when they were going to send people to Mars? You remember that? People were signing up. How much you hate life. You want to go to Mars. Dude, the only way that works is two gay dudes with a bunch of wings. That's the only way that happens. Because they can just keep mixing it up and being different people. You put a man and a woman on there, there's a murder within 2 seconds, right? There's no way. You got to have two dudes.
We're supposed to be going back to the moon in 2 years.
Are we?
Yeah, the first woman's supposed to be on the moon in the next 2 years. So let's see if they can reenact that. Who's going to be the actors for that?
Yeah, I don't
It
buy
just
it.
sounds like somebody in NASA wants to get rid of their wife. Oh yeah, you're gonna get on that plane. Get the fuck out. Sign this life insurance first, then get on that thing. We're gonna send you to space.
Well, funny enough, you mentioned homosexual men being going out into space. Ironically enough, Kenneth Grant, who was a guy who followed Aleister Crowley, he created an offshoot of this magical order called the Typhonian Ordo Templi Orientis. I know it's a mouthful, but the short version is this guy was into magic rituals and stuff, and he followed Crowley's formula of adding some levels of initiation into the OTO, and his branch, the Typhonian OTO, was specifically about making contact with entities to open up gateways, to open up portals, and that was what they were all about. And that 11th degree, the final degree of initiation in the OTO and in the Typhonian OTO, was anal penetration of two men. You didn't have to be homosexual because that's not what it was about. It was about accessing these.
How bad do you want it?
Yeah, and you gotta want it pretty bad, Sam.
Which is like
I know from experience. You gotta want it really bad.
What's very interesting is like that becomes what we always hear about in Hollywood, right? Like this becomes this thing where it's like, oh yeah, dude, you hear rumors about Brad Pitt, you hear rumors about what Jamie Foxx running everything, right? Like these are the rumors you hear and what they do, and it's like. I've just always said this, dude. It's like the anus is somehow like some sort of passageway to like interdimensional. I don't know what it is, but there's something about the butt that is just a little different. It's mystical, right? I mean, there's something about that.
Well, they call it it's like a tantric idea. They call it the kalas, and it's they think there's like some kind of magical energy that can be unleashed and utilized. This is very similar. As your Marina Abramovich spirit cooking and your I can't think of the other Alison Crowley's Cakes of Light, where he proposes this mock Eucharist based upon bodily fluids, blood, semen, feces is even included in the rituals, as Alison Crowley talked about. But yeah, there's something, and where that relates to the overarching idea of contact aliens is through the anus, one can get into the subconscious. You can subdue the conscious mind and get into the subconscious, which fits into this idea. They talk about creativity in the occult, and that seems to be a big thing to them. It's like a bridge to the abyss, they call it. And that was one of the main ideas I put together, because when you look at actual, because there's two separate sort of fields of research going on, and as far as I know, I don't know, I mean, I'm sure someone else has written about this, but I don't know anyone else that has. But when you've got people like Jacques Vallée, who's like this, ultra science guy who's researching UFOs his whole life, obviously an intelligent guy, obviously spent more time thinking about this than like I did or anyone else, and he says that UFOs are a control system. He says they're not nuts and bolts. It's a mental control system. And then you look at quantum physics.
I mean, is he saying they don't exist or just used to control us mentally?
Yeah, it's kind of a vague thing, right? And it's very hard to explain. And it gets into real like woo-woo territory with all of this. There's a quote he gave about it. Let me find it for you real quick. I was kind of compiling my notes because there's like a lot of like heady topics in this book, and I tried to sort of distill it down to so I don't lose people, right? He called it things like the frontier of consciousness. There's always conscious elements to it, right? Let me find you the quote here. Stand by just 1 second. This is my first. By the way, this is my first show. To talk about this book.
And that book cherry, huh, dog?
Oh man, I appreciate it, man. I couldn't be happier to have it on this show. He said that they were a control system. He says the manifestations are not spacecraft in the nuts and bolts sense. It can't be understood without the psychic and symbolic reality. It's not an alien invasion. It's a control system which uses humans. And like, this is a guy that, you know, I would argue he knows more about UFOs than damn near anybody on the planet, right? And like, what is he saying? Like, isn't that vague and strange? Well, you got to dig into the world of the quantum to understand what he's saying. And quantum thought, quantum reality ties into a lot of this occult ritual magic stuff, right? Because, and you know, this could dive off into deep rabbit holes, but
We're all about that.
Okay, all right. So,
by the way, rabbit hole's my new word for butthole. From now on, we're gonna dive deep in that rabbit hole.
That's a shirt. That's a fucking shirt right there.
give me one of them shirts, man. I'll cut them sleeves off.
Done deal, dude. Shred it out.
So you've got, and I'll try to get the short version of this. You've got classical Newtonian physics, right? That's the idea of when you look at Isaac Newton, Rene Descartes, philosophers, scientists, they were saying, okay, you've got the world of the mental, and then you've got the world of the physical, and they're two separate things. The two shall never meet, sort of. And Newton clarified this with all these equations and the laws of thermodynamics and all this stuff, right? And basically, it was like energy is a force used to move matter. And then Rene Descartes is using all this sort of philosophy to think of like, you know, I think, therefore I am. And he kind of clarified the idea of how the mind is totally different, right? So fast forward to Albert Einstein. Einstein comes along and he basically invents quantum physics, which when you get down to the subatomic level, the laws and the rules in Newtonian classical physics, they fall apart. They don't work at the subatomic level. Why is that? And it's because they require, and I'm no quantum physicist, so like, you know, by all means, don't take this to the bank. But basically, the observer, there's a thing called the observer effect, and it's demonstrated with the Schrodinger's cat example, where there's this box and it's full of radiation, and there's a cat in there, and you know it's dead, but it lives in this state of quantum superposition where it's alive and dead at the same time. You don't know until you open the box and the observer looks, confirms it, and it's what they call collapsing the wave, and now it's defined as dead. And they find that in the subatomic level, that's how this works with like light waves versus particles and all this stuff. And to sum it up, this fits into the world of the occult because the magicians, they're always saying that hermetic axiom, as above, so below. And that's exactly what's happening in the world of physics and science. You've got this idea that the cosmos of planetary motions and energy and forces, but then you get to the subatomic level and it's a totally different game. And it requires the mind of the practitioner, of the magician, to clarify what is reality, which gets to, you know, on the level that we see.
Hey everybody, real quick, I want to tell you about the movie Sensational, produced by my good friends over there at L. Wright Productions, okay? Sensational deals with basically censorship on the internet, which is really important right now because we're seeing people getting kicked off YouTube, kicked off Twitter, kicked off Facebook to try to control the narrative. And it's got some amazing people on. Alex Jones, Roger Stone, Liz Crokin. They're all on it, and it just discusses and calls out the false narrative and cover-ups, okay? My good friend Dave Lugo felt that the story needed to be told, man. And let me tell you something about this picture, this film. It is beautifully well done, and why I really enjoy this is because Elride is an independent production company. It's not part of the system. Everything they put out is their own self-funded, get it done, dude, and it's a lot of fun. This thing, it breaks down basically where fake news came from, why they're trying to stop misinformation, quote-unquote misinformation. It is a wonderful movie. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I would love for you guys to check it out. The doc explores the notion of thinking for yourself, gathering the facts, and do not be misguided. The documentary is very well done. It's informative and fair and not one-sided, not right or left. It gives both sides. Networks are pushing one narrative and making sure their agenda is met. The documentary is excellent at making you put the pieces of the puzzle together for yourself, okay? Here's what I want you guys to do. Go check out sensationalfilms.com. SENSATIONFilms.com. check it out. I know you guys are going to love it. So just hashtag sensational. Enjoy the rest of the show. I mean, dude, that's so interesting. It's basically like, and it gets down to what I'm saying, and I've always been saying, it's like there's no reality, there's only perception. And what you perceive becomes your reality. And if I'm understanding this right, and I could be totally wrong, I flunked first grade, so just, I'm digesting, heavy digestion here, but, like these aliens, it's just a perception. And if you, isn't that kind of like the shadow in the cave idea? Like kind of like they would project shadows onto a cave, and people would think there were giant monsters out there, and therefore they could control you. And the thoughts of that, oh, if you leave the cave, these giant monsters are going to eat you. And that kind of comes within like kind of what aliens are as well. It's like your mind determines whether there's an alien. I said this on the Brian Callen show. I go, whatever we live on, dude, I think it's whatever you want it to be, right? If it's a round ball hurling through space, then that's what it is to you. If you think it's a flat Earth, then that's what it is to you. If you think it's a realm, that's what it is to you, because if there is no definition of it. I mean, we get it through NASA, and everybody's like just buys into this group that's just a bunch of Nazis that have been like caught lying to us constantly. So it's like, we don't know what this is. We just know that, I mean, up until recently, they were teaching it was a flat Earth, and now all of a sudden it's a ball. And you look all the way back to early Buddhism. It's a simulation. So who knows what it is? But whatever you perceive it is what it becomes. Am I close on that? Is that kind of what you were talking about? Did I say it in dumb speak?
Do you think Betty and Barney Hill were the first ones to conceive that idea of aliens, and then they gave it to everybody else? So they were the first that got abducted, right? Right. And this is where they were the first ones. And that's what I'm wondering, Christian, do you think they were the first ones to actually bring up that idea, or do you think someone told them it happened, and then they ran with it, and then everyone started getting abducted?
Yeah, so this is where things get kind of strange, right? I believe, so Betty and Barney Hill, first off, let's talk about them. They went under, what do you call it, regressive hypnosis, and they described the aliens, and it turned out that the aliens they described that abducted them were exactly like an episode of The Outer Limits, which had aired just before, that they'd watched just before.
Oh man, that's so interesting.
Yeah, and that's what my whole shtick is. And I kind of suspected this idea, and it wasn't until I read Dr. Diana Pasulka's book, which I interviewed her on my show, and like I think, and I recommend her book even over mine. Like I tell everyone, like, you got to read this book because she was hanging out with these alien nerd scientists, and they've got all this UFO stuff. They believe in it. They'll even say like, look, this isn't a belief, this is reality. We've got the piece of the thing here. Like this is happening, right? But in her book, there is kind of, I'm not going to put words in her mouth, but the way I interpreted the book was it more or less supported this idea that I've been sort of flirting with for years, that symbolism, archetypes, messaging, predictive programming, and entertainment can manifest real results in reality. And in the book, there's a section, and it says, I'll read you right from it. It says, over the past 2 decades, the relationship between cinema and memory has been the object of increasing academic attention. Growing interest in film and cinema repositories for representing, shaping, recreating, or indexing forms of individual and collective memories. Now, you got to look into the idea of how the mind works, and they say that like memories are a bit, we reconstruct them on a routine basis, right? Like that's why that journalist Brian Williams swore he was in a helicopter that got shot down, and he believed it because he had lived it in his mind. I guess hearing the story so many times or talking about it so many times that it really seemed like reality to him, and that's what I think all this entertainment is. And to get back to XG's question about Betty Barney Hill. You've got a couple things going on. On one hand, you've got occultists like Aleister Crowley doing rituals back in as early as 1917. You go to channel, they call it the Amalantra workings, where he channeled Lamb, this great alien in. you go hundreds of years prior to John B. Edward Kelly, they were using this Enochian language that God gave to Adam back in the day. They're channeling aliens and banging each other's wives and all this stuff. And then you go to like the 40s, right? The 40s is when a lot of really critical things happen in the world of ufology. You've got like the first nuclear test. You've got Jack Parsons.
That was the world. They also did that on the radio reading. That freaked people out because they thought that was real. If you didn't listen to it from the beginning, it tells you this is a book read. But if you're just halfway reading it, you might believe that there's an alien invasion going on, and then that spread the whole thing where people were freaking the fuck out.
Yeah, and that's a technique they use to trick the mind, because that's part of the argument I lay out in the book using this guy, Dr. Jeffrey Sachs. He's a neuroscientist, and he talks about cognitive models. And basically what he's saying, and there's, I'll explain it through an example. There's a movie called The Fourth Kind with Mia Yala, I'm butchering her name, you know what I'm talking about. And, she was in Resident Evil, and what was it?
That model?
Yeah.
Yeah, she was in The Fifth Element, too.
Yeah, Mia Yala.
Mia Jovovich or something like that. Yeah.
I think it's just like Jovovich, right?
Yeah, that's what it is. She was Dr. Tyler in the movie.
Yeah, okay, yeah, you're very familiar with it. Yeah, so like in that movie, if you recall in the beginning, they said this is based on real events or whatever, but it turned out it wasn't, right? And it's like Blair Witch. And I remember, I don't know if I remember Blair Witch was in the movie. And when I saw it, like the first week, and everyone was like, oh my God, this is real, it's real found footage. And like, I remember being terrified, being like, dude, is this for real? Yeah. It turns out it was fake, right? But the problem is, Jeffrey Sachs, this smart brain guy, he's out here saying like, look, the mind doesn't know the difference. You watch a piece of entertainment, and it tells your mind, hey, this is real, even though it's not. Your brain doesn't distinguish between the two. It built models of this stuff. And you build enough models of aliens and UFOs and all this stuff, and it becomes real to you, to your mind.
I totally understand what you're saying right now.
Right?
Like, it's almost like you find what you're looking for.
Well, can I ask maybe a question to take this even a step further? Is there an effective difference between something that is like manifested or a collective delusion and the actual thing, if it were to exist? Or I mean, is it as though it exists if enough people believe it?
Yeah, and not to the subjective mind, no. This is, when you get into the quantum mind, or the quantum model of reality, it basically, and I believe it ties into the ideas of the Buddhist Eightfold Path, right? It's about, you use meditation to get to the subconscious, and you sort of program your day in a positive way, and you're going to have great things happen, and you're going to try to counterbalance the chemical messengers of the body that have all this trauma of like being triggered by this person or this event. And it's all about the power of the mind and trying to get into the subconscious where the wiring, so to speak, happens to your body. So I would argue that this is very real to the person who's experiencing it.
Well, my question is, do you think it's possible that these things, if enough people believe them, can be manifested essentially and be real to other people?
Yeah, and that's my concern. That's my concern. Because and here's why it's a concern to me, is because I believe that this is a religious, spiritual battle on some levels. Not religious as in the organized religion, but more or less, Jesus Christ and God versus Lucifer, Satan, and the fallen angels. This is why God, busted out the flood and killed the Nephilim. You know what I mean? Like, it's because there's this capability to pierce the veil and have these things, these entities, interface with mankind. Like to me, it goes all the way back to that.
All right, I want to tell you about our good friends at MyBookie, dude. Between the NFL, college ball, Major League Baseball playoffs, there's no shortage of games to watch with thousands of lines available on all your favorite sports and events. you can turn your game day into a payday with my bookie, man. You could do parlays, right? Yeah, simple parlays, man. You think you got it good? Go for a bigger payout on these parlays. Play a couple games all together, hit big. Go big, win big, okay? Or you can do the underdogs, man. They have a ton of value, okay? That's the thing about the NFL. Underdogs always have a shot, and you can do it. Game spreads, championship futures, player prop bets. I love player prop bets, okay? It's never too late to get in on the action and turn your sports knowledge into actual cash in your wallet, okay? Sign up at MyBookie. When you do, use the promo code TINFOILHAT to claim your deposit match dollar for dollar all the way up to $1,000, man. It's a bonus designed to give you a little help and a head start on your winning season. That promo code is TINFOILHAT for you to claim your bonus when you make your deposit, okay? UFC, NFL, Major League Baseball, World Series coming, boxing, you got it, all there available for you at MyBookie. Enjoy the rest of the show. You know, it's interesting. It's almost like in Ghostbusters where he, like, manifests the Stay Puft Marshmallow. Like, don't think about anything. And all of a sudden, it's like, bish, bish, and all of a sudden there's a Marshmallow Man. But no, it's very interesting because I totally believe this. If enough people believe in something, it becomes real, right? Like, is there any proof of a devil? Probably not. I mean, there's no actual proof of it. There's like one line in the Bible, but there's enough people that believe in the devil now that it almost manifests itself into an entity that exists. And I know, like, you're not a Q guy, but what I've been talking about when it comes to Q is that if enough people believe in Q, does it become something? Is it an entity? Does it become something that, whatever it started as, what it becomes? But that's my whole thing. If enough people, and how many people do you think believe in Q? What was it? 1 million, 2 million, 60 million, whatever that number is. That's a lot of people to believe in something. And what it could start as, and what it becomes based on this belief system, could be two different things. And that's kind of my whole point on all that. It's like, if enough people believe in this, like the coronavirus, right? Yes, we had a couple people die, obviously, depending on the numbers that you believe, right? You know? But it's like, was it the pandemic or the plague that everyone thought it was? I didn't see all those bodies everywhere, but man, the way people believed in it, all of a sudden we were in the middle of a black plague.
Right, and if you look at, to keep it sort of on the level of what people will buy into and understand and accept, look at how the government and the Pentagon approach this idea of UFOs, right? You got to go, and I talk about the history of this in my book when we talk about a group called the Collins Elite. What happened was the sequence of events basically was in 46, 47. Jack Parsons, L. Ron Hubbard are out in the desert doing Crowley's Amelantra workings, trying to channel in this goddess of Babylon, you know, and this is a cult, old hat. This, you know, that's what they do. They're just out there trying to talk to entities and stuff. And they do this, and they open up the portals. They open up the gateways. And here comes the Pentagon sniffing around, and this Collins Elite group, which is a group of sort of like intel insiders with also a sort of knowledge of religion and understanding of the spiritual elements here. And they think, oh my gosh, this guy who calls himself the Antichrist, Jack Parsons, he's out here channeling entities into our world. You know, Roswell happened, and they're worried this guy's really opening up portals. So they were kind of like telling the Pentagon, like, hey, maybe we should chill out with all this alien stuff, because the Pentagon, meanwhile, they're supporting research projects like Project Stargate out of SRI with Uri Geller and Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff. And basically what they're doing is they start, and this is all around the same time period, they're starting to look into, like, can they weaponize this? Can our enemies weaponize the power of telekinesis, remote viewing? Can they spy on us? Can we spy on them? They start messing around with all these weird mental things, as you see in the Minister of Ghosts. Well, this whole time, the Collins Elite, as the story goes, from people like Nick Redfern, he wrote a book called Final Events talking about the Collins Elite. That's where I read it. And he says that the whole time they were like, hey, maybe we shouldn't mess with this stuff. We're worried you're going to actually pull demons and demonic entities into our world doing this stuff, because that's what the people who started this, Jack Parsons, that's what they were about. So then in 52, Parsons dies, and this starts a whole panic inside of this colony elite, the Pentagon, and they're running around like, oh my god, this guy unexpectedly, and like we're afraid he gets some portals open. Next year, the Robertson panel drops a report, and it's talking about the UFO phenomenon, and basically it's an insider report saying like, okay, as U.S. government, what we're going to do to address this is we're going to use propaganda through Disney and films and entertainment, mass media to convince the public that UFOs don't exist. And one is to keep people pacified and chilled out. Two, they can't very well come out and say, oh, hey, by the way, we've been like researching these demonologists and occultists, and we're messing around with opening up portals and viewing the enemy. Like they can't come out and say that, especially in the 1950s America. You know what I mean? Like it's unacceptable, right? Well, fast forward 70 years, and you'll notice there's this renewed effort for disclosure. They're classic propaganda 101. They're redefining the term from UFO. Now it's UAP, okay? Then you got Tom DeLonge, the guy from Blink-182, who's singing about sucking their dad's cock. Freemason. He's a Freemason. All of a sudden, the official story is, all of a sudden the generals and the Pentagon pull him into the skiff and like, oh hey, come on, Tom DeLonge, let's tell you about all the secret areas.
They thought he was like cool and hip and connected. Like this is like 8 years after Blink-182 was, and like I'm fine with Blink-182, but they were just like, they're like, oh, cool, hip youngster, can we get to connect with you? Oh, let's get Tom DeLonge. I believe he was kicked out at that point too. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's funny because when I was blogging, I started blogging in 2011, and he started a blog like shortly thereafter. I'm not saying he like copied me or nothing like that. He started a blog called Strange Times, and I remember watching it, and I checked on it every day, and then it kind of fizzled out and died. So he's been doing this a long time, but the official story. So now,
well, Isaac, sorry, just real quick. Do you think he started out as a genuine truth seeker and was just like co-opted, or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I would assume that's how it went. Obviously, I don't know, but I would assume that's how it went because this guy's very intrigued by it. Obviously, he's got some fan base or whatever they tap into. Why they chose him, I have no idea. I just know it doesn't make any damn sense that the Pentagon and these generals and these pilots are going to be like, oh, Tom DeLonge, let's put you into a skiff. I was in the military. So first you need a security clearance, which I doubt Tom DeLonge has. Costs $50,000, $100,000. Let's say he has it though. And
does it cost that much because they have to go interview people and stuff? Is that why it costs so much?
Yeah. I'm gonna pay for your own security clearance.
Well, he would have, right? Like, who's paying for Tom DeLonge's security clearance? You know what I mean? Like, for him, his story is that he got pulled into a skiff, which is like, I don't know what the term stands for. It's basically where you discuss classified information, And he says, they pulled me into the skiff and told me about these UFO materials. And it's like, well, first off, you need a clearance. Second off, you have a need to know. You don't just because you have a clearance doesn't mean you get anything you want. Like, you have to have a need to know. It has to be pertaining to your job, right? And like for instance, I handle munitions and bombs and stuff. Well, it doesn't, and I had a secret clearance. That doesn't mean I can go over to where the planes are I don't know, putting a secret.
Right.
And to be clear, those aren't like suggestions. Those are the rules for how intelligence sharing works, right? Yeah.
As far as I know, and I could be a little off of that, but that's the general idea behind it. And for me, I just don't buy it. I just don't believe it. I don't believe that they pulled them into the skiff, told them about all this, and now on top of this, 90% of the media we consume is by 6 companies, and one of them is Disney. And Disney was part of the 1953 Robinson panel to start debunking UFOs. Well, now it's flip-flopping the other way around. Now, you'll notice the sentiment when you talk to people now is you ask someone, do you believe in aliens? And it's like, well, of course I do. There's a billion planets out there and a million suns. Why would there be aliens? Years ago, it wasn't like that. 6 years ago, it was like, oh, that's tinfoil hat nutty stuff. And who believes in aliens?
Right.
They're sheep and they're falling for it because Disney's out here pushing Ancient Aliens and Prometheus Entertainment and Skinwalker Ranch. And look, man, like, I get it. Like I said, I believe in all this alien stuff. I just see that there's an agenda at play here, and I'm trying to discern what the agenda is. Because Werner von Braun, old Nazi paperclip scientist himself, who was hanging out with Walt Disney, he said, according to Carol Rosin, who was a friend of his and co-worker of his for many years, she's a doctor, she said that on his deathbed, essentially, he said, the last card is gonna be a fake alien invasion. Don't believe it. Something to that effect. It's in the book.
But that's totally that is 100% has been like deep conspiracy theorist belief that that's the card that's going to get played because that's how they bring everybody together. I mean, didn't Ronald Reagan talk about that? Ronald's like, you know what we need is like some aliens to attack. And
he said if there was an alien invasion, we'd all come together and we'd stop worrying about atomic bombs and like shit that doesn't really matter because we'd all be one planet. But I was gonna ask you, Isaac, though, I know you don't believe in like the aliens and the abductions, but when someone sees the unidentified flying object, what is that? Like we're all watching it, we've seen the video.
Well, before you answer that, I just want to stay on this New World Order thing real quick, and then we'll get into what that is. But the reason also that Project Bluebeam is so important because if aliens do arrive, what does that do to organized religion? What does that do? I mean, like, we just on the last episode, we were talking about how there's been this slow but deliberate movement from the power elites to basically cripple or discredit spirituality and religion. And it's just by, like, positioning people in places that are bought and sold corrupt and exposing the corruption so people associate that with their religion. Well, what a great way to destroy the notion that we're the center of anything, we're God's chosen people, if a bunch of giant grays show up and they're like, yeah, dude, fuck your God and the clicky claims, right? And so it's like, where do we go from there? That's a big part of this. And then we turn into, okay, we're just a speck of shit on a rock hurling through space. So I think the New World Order, that's a giant thing. Get rid of all these borders, become one government. Now, that sounds really great, that humanity comes together. But what happens when that does happen is really amazing things like the Constitution, the First Amendment, the Second Amendment get thrown out the door. Because now we have a whole new document that lets us know what our freedoms are, and those old rules don't play anymore. So that the alien attack is a giant part of that. And the last thing on Tom DeLonge is like, WikiLeaks put out this whole thing that these emails between Tom DeLonge and John Podesta. And Tom DeLonge's like, oh yeah, we're gonna get you cool with the youth, man. It's like, could you imagine John Podesta on stage with Blink 182 just waving his hands in the air like he just don't care as he's got that weird fish tattoos on his hands, right? So it's like, it's there's a long game going on that involves aliens.
Hey, but how do you think the invasion would happen? Do you think it would be through Neuralink or 5G or Elon Musk? Because that's what comes with something like that. Neuralink, they're just gonna punch a alien invasion right in your brain.
Yeah, and that's what I've got a chapter on Project Bluebeam because I read through Sergeant McNast. He's the guy who first pitched this idea. I don't know how reliable he was, but he wrote about it in like 1994 and died shortly thereafter. And in '94, for being written in '94, a lot of the stuff he was talking about sure did come true. The idea of the Project Bluebeam is that NASA was going to push this agenda for a new world order with the Antichrist as the figurehead, NASA's out here saying they're going to prove that aliens exist by 2025. They sent this Europa mission thing or whatever it's called out, or I'm sorry, Osiris Rex, I believe it was called, out to an asteroid, where they're going to return samples by 2023, analyze them, and the idea is that they want to find proof of life on this asteroid.
How do they know it's going to be there? How do they know that was ever? It's just so interesting. It's like, dude, this planet is 280 million light years away. I'm like, then how did you get that picture if it's so far away?
I don't understand. I certainly don't understand it.
But it's just very interesting. So it's like, you know, on the Tinfoil Hat Patreon, there's a gentleman named Bob Bob. And Bob is an interesting guy. And sometimes he likes the sauce a little bit. And he comes on, he starts going really deep. And he broke down Project Bluebeam for me. And one thing he was talking about is how each area of the... So basically, it's my belief that these satellites that Elon Musk put up is the AV unit for Project Bluebeam. That's where all the satellites are going to go. That's where all the sound effects are going to go. So they're setting this thing up. And the Project Bluebeam will be in each area, whatever the religion is. An image will show up of that God talking to the masses, trying to connect with them, right? And the problem is that they're having right now is that there's no pictures of Muhammad. You can't draw pictures of, you can't have pictures of. So they're going to try to figure out how to make that happen. But basically what happens is each one, their Messiah will come down and tell them, hey, I'm here, get behind me. And that all the Messiahs will come together in like some Voltron Messiah. And that will be like the leader of the world. That's how they're going to make it happen. Voltron Messiah is going to start wrecking shop, and that's kind of where it's going.
Yeah, and you know, you mentioned the Elon Musk Starlink launching all these satellites out there. You've also got simultaneously the effort for 5G to roll out, right? And 5G, you look at, you know, David Petraeus talked about this many years ago about how 5G is the Internet of Things, meaning all devices will have internet connectivity. And what better way to deceive the masses than to have every device feeding into, responding, and behaving according to some, you know, software out there? And I postulate that. Look at the Phoenix Lights, right? That is a case of the most eyewitness of UFOs ever in history, right? In the late 90s. Well, I mean, it's possible those were just drones. You see the drone formations at the Super Bowl and stuff, that shit looks pretty crazy. Well, I mean, they could have had that 10, 20 years prior. And like all DARPA-type black projects, they're always 20, 30 years ahead of technology. So it could be that the Phoenix Lights were just a well-coordinated drone effort, and that's proof that they can pull this off. Now imagine you've got way more devices hooked up to the internet. You've got the Neuralink brain cap plugged into seeing things or whatever. You know, technology as a way of manipulating reality, right? It's totally possible, virtual reality, that kind of stuff. But what's curious, and to talk about, to just quickly talk about the Antichrist idea of the world religions. Helena Blavatsky's Theosophy talked about it, the final teacher, the great world teacher, the Betrayer coming. And that is what this Antichrist figure is going to be. Obviously, they don't think, oh, it's Satan with the pitchfork and horn. They don't think that. They think it's this great world teacher that's going to unify the world together. But Serge Monast, in one of the steps, he talks about how there's going to be artificial thought and communication telepathically, right? And this telepathic communication would use, you know, frequency waves to make people believe that God is speaking directly to them.
Dude, it's already happening. Voice of God technology.
Yeah, voice of God technology, voice to skull technology.
All these guys who shoot up schools, each one of them talks about, what do they have in common? They all are on drugs. They all love these video games. Some of them went to very controversial, like, youth, you know, training schools or programs that were like, people question them later on what was going on there. if you even take a look at like Paris Hilton, right? She went to this school in Utah and she's been talking about this. And like Kat Von D supposedly went to the same school, which is very weird, man. And they both kind of blew up again, but they talk about being drugged and used for sex and all this stuff. And it's like, if that fits into that MK Ultra stuff, which is men become killing machines and women become sex kids. And that's kind of what it does. But all these guys who shoot up these schools, they're all on pharmaceutical drugs, and they all say they heard a voice. And it's like, what if that is a game, part of the game too? Get you on pharmaceuticals, and through television or video games, you could send like thoughts to their heads.
Yeah, wasn't that like a plot of a was it the Riddler and Batman Returns or something like that? One of those. Anyway, with certain Manass said that's concerning to me. I'm going to read you from what he said. He said he's talking about these frequency waves talking to people. He said such rays from satellites are fed from memories of computers that have stored massive data about every human on Earth and their languages. Well, what the hell have we been doing the last 20 years? We've been funneling every piece of data into social media, into this massive bubble hive complex of privacy and community storage facility out in Utah. And, you see the repercussions of this everywhere. TikTok and stuff like that, they're all stealing the data. And arguably, it's like, well, what are they doing with that data? And it could be that they're compiling avatars, they're using it against us, is the argument. And, certain Mass said this in 94. I didn't know.
So this woman, Minnie, I forget what her last name is. Minnie Weaver, I think is her name. I probably got it wrong.
Millie Weaver?
What?
Oh, go ahead. Millie Weaver? I think it's maybe
Millie Weaver, is that her name? Is she the one who does the Shadowgate videos?
Yeah, I think so. Was she the one that got arrested?
Yeah. So, there's all this controversy about her, who her husband is, what he's been accused of, and I get that. And so I had a conversation with a good friend of mine. He's like, oh, yeah, that guy's a shill, that guy's a shill. It's like not everybody's a shill. So if everybody's a shill, nobody's a shill. I mean, I don't understand it. Like, we just had this purge going. I'm not gonna get to that. But the whole point is that she it's like, okay, if everybody's a shill, I don't know. Who do I talk to? Myself in the mirror? Is that what you guys want me to do? It's like, I don't know what to do after that. So all I can do is like take what they're saying, digest it, and if it makes sense, listen to it. If it doesn't, don't listen to it. That's really all you could do at this point. So this woman she got arrested supposedly. There's all controversies behind that, but she's put out a couple videos, and they're very interesting. Shadowgate 1, Shadowgate 2. And the thing that's interesting in both of those videos is they're talking about mining data and using that data against you. In the first episode, they talk about Obama, John Brennan, and Obama give out Obama phones. You remember Obama phones? And everyone's like, dude, Obama gave me a phone. I love Obama. And everyone's like, damn, Obama's giving out phones. Well, it turns out a big part of that was mining their data. Was mining the data off these free phones. So if somebody gives you something for free, the deal is you can have this for free, but we get your data, which is what your Gmail's about, right? You're paying for Gmail. They get all your data based on what your email. They read your emails, all that stuff. That's the deal they give you.
Yeah, I mean, it's that saying, right? If you're not paying for it, you're the product, right?
But I do pay for stuff on Gmail, but they probably don't care. They probably just don't care.
You don't have to pay to use it, though. You just pay for extra storage, probably.
Yeah, I am paying for extra storage.
That and you press research. It's research in there.
Okay, you guys are the worst lawyers. I got it. Jesus, I went to for legal advice. You guys kicked me in the dick. But the point is this, dude, is that, she brought up that Obama basically used the data off that phone to figure out how to entice these people to riot. That's what the movie said. So now the next Shadowgate 2 comes out, same guy's talking. He's talking about how they basically created programs that would basically take your data, find out what is basically your weakness is, and then basically do, what's it called, gang stalking, internet-wise, just sending all these different fake profiles of these people to really try to break you down mentally So you snap and just, whether you're a politician, they don't want him in the race, and you get off. And like, so that's really what they're doing here. This what you're talking about, I think, is 100% true. That's what they're doing. They're mining your data and all that shit.
That happened to me on my Twitter. There was a guy arguing with me, and it's funny. On my Patreon, I have this. I started a sort of secondary fun podcast called Truth or Drama, right? And on the, it was just an idea I came up with, right? And I just basically talk about drama, and it's mostly about me. Like people talk shit to me, tell me I'm an idiot, whatever. And there was one guy on Twitter, and I didn't realize I was going to do the show until like a couple weeks after I was just getting blasted the last few weeks. I'm like, what is happening? All this hate, you know? And I assumed it was because I did a 4-part expose on QAnon, being very critical of it, right?
Yeah.
And this one guy was like, he's ragging on me, and I thought, okay, I got to talk about that on the show. So I went back to my Twitter to find that feed to sort of like talk about what he had said to me, he or she. I don't want to assume gender. And the person that said
Just say it.
its profile said this profile has been deleted or removed or something like that. And I thought, that's bizarre. So like, what? Someone just popped up, messed with me, and then disappeared. I think it's very strange. It didn't say it was suspended. It said it was removed, like deleted. Something like that.
Well, that's probably because it turned out not to be real. So here's what's happening, dude. I brought this up before, but remember Ashley Madison, where people who were married could sign up and get some side strings, right? And then, like, it got exposed, and there was, like, 1 million guys and, like, 20 chicks were on it, right? And so basically what would happen was women would sign up, but then they would leave. But they wouldn't delete the profile. What happens is Ashley Madison would take over the female profile and use it to entice, basically bait men to stay on Ashley Madison, right? So that's kind of what happens. That's kind of what's happening on Twitter. You know, I forget who I had up, but they were talking about how people are leaving Twitter in droves, but instead of getting rid of their profile, Twitter is taking them over. Or a company is taking them over and basically using them. So what happens with that? So you ever just get blasted by some guy out of nowhere and you go to their Twitter page, it's like, I've got 14 followers since 2010. That's probably a dead account that has been taken over and is just used to do this astroturfing shit. Now, I'm not saying everybody on Twitter has to have 1 million followers, but if you seem to engage in people, the site is basically made to socialize and connect with people. But in 10 years, you've gotten 10 followers. It doesn't even make any sense. So you see that, and like on YouTube, right? What they'll do is, if your comment section gets too toxic, they can remove your account. So if you have people all the time just yelling and screaming all the time, YouTube be like, oh, it's too toxic, we gotta get rid of it. So what I've always told people is like, just block people, man. You gotta learn to block people. Because if you don't, you're setting yourself up. This is the game that is being played by intelligence service, the tech lords. It's just to basically create a lot of pain and suffering because they feed off that shit. That's my God honest truth, man.
I feel like Facebook does the same thing. To delete a Facebook account is like the most impossible thing. And I think Facebook, yeah, and I think Facebook keeps you on there to put you like in a category of whatever the fuck they want to do it, and just to prove that you're part of that. Like, oh, he's 25, he'll be a Democrat, and since I don't log in, and it takes forever to log out, you got to deactivate it, then you can't log into anything for like 3 months, and then it'll go away. But it's like you said, you got to go to court for that shit. And I think they keep you on there because they want you for some reason. They're using your data for something. Even if you don't post nothing, even if you're just that person that goes scrolling down, and they love it there. They love your data for some fucking reason.
Well, if you have the Google app, which I have, and you have the Facebook app, which I don't have, they mine your data on your phone. That's the deal. You get it for free, and they'll mine your data. And here's the whole thing, dude. All this shit is really simply goes away when you get off your phone. Just get off your phone. Don't spend your life on your internet. Coming from a guy who makes his money off the internet, that's some dangerous shit to say. But the truth is, if you stop bringing this everywhere you go, like I have one of those Geminis where I can put in the address and it gives me my MapQuest or whatever, my GPS, and I don't have to use my phone. I must not leave my phone at home, man. It's just like that's how they track you now, and especially with this virus. So now this thing's coming out that Apple and I think Google are now working on a deal where they're going to basically track you once you get the virus. Once you get the virus vaccine, they're going to be basically spying on you. So when you go get this vaccine, which I don't even understand, this is a whole different story, but I don't want to get too much into that. I want to talk about with you, Isaac. There's this talk now that Trump. I know people go crazy when they hear this. There's now some rumblings within the Christian organizations that Trump is the Antichrist. Have you heard anything about this?
I haven't. That's very curious. I mean, Mike Pence is the one that had to fly on his rubber head there the other day in the debate. So
it's just so interesting how far the spectrum comes that people think Mike Pence is a good guy. You remember when he was in Indiana? He was Indiana's governor. People couldn't stand him. He was like allowing. It's like, oh yeah, you're gay, you don't get a birthday cake. It's like, what?
Well, dude, he was like Rush Limbaugh. He came out of talk radio, right? We talk radio. He was like the Rush Limbaugh out there.
Isn't that crazy? Because he seems so dry. Would you ever listen to that robot talk about anything on the radio? Hello, welcome, gay people. No birthday cake for you. We'll be right back. Right? Like, who's gonna listen to any of that shit?
He did a whole makeover. Yeah, somebody got him. Somebody plugged him up and said, you know what? We're gonna put you in a position of power. That's what happened.
It's so weird because I think he lost his race for governor after the whole gay thing happened, where like you can't get birthday cake. I'm like, what the fuck is that? Or a wedding cake or something like that. But the whole thing about Trump is like, and somebody sent me this video of this guy who was a giant Q person and now he's not, and he was talking about Revelations and how Trump fits the Antichrist, and that he gets the plague and he's cured instantly. That was him with the virus, and now all of a sudden he doesn't have the virus. And then supposedly the vaccination is the beast, right? That's the whole story on that. And that he's actually bringing the troops home to force that on us. Have you heard anything about that?
Well, as far as that, I talk about the apocalypse and the revelation thing in the book because it actually means, so apocalypse means to uncover what has been previously hidden, okay? I argue that this could be the great work of the Freemasons. This is similar to the alchemical rebirth. It's about bringing in new age. Because when you look at the occultists, Blavatsky was talking about how Satan was the highest divine spirit. They hold high reverence for Lucifer, Satan, whatever you want to call this. I mean, you can split hairs and try to argue that they're not the same being, whatever. The point being is that the God of inversion there, the Gnostic principle that good is bad, bad is good, is what holds true here, right? Now, Carl Jung, he said that the revelation, the apocalypse, was all about activating the archetype of self, meaning the collective unconscious. And it's going to bring this new world view that has a new relationship to the divine. Now, to me, I feel like the Illuminati, or whatever you want to call this group that are controlling this thing, they are more or less using the book of Revelation as a recipe book to use as the great work, to bring this antichrist, universal world religion into fruition. And you can go a lot of directions with this. But the new religion of the alien, because I think the reason they need the aliens is there's a couple reasons why. One is like you go the Werner von Braun route, where it's like, oh, they want, and this is the Dr. Greer Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind route, where this is military industrial complex, national security state, privacy invasion stuff, where they're going to give us this threat of aliens so that we give up more privacy for the illusion of safety, and it's a way of making money and instilling fear upon the masses. But then the other angle is it's to create this one world government with the Antichrist as the head to destroy all the religions, right? But the new religion is going to be centered around the Antichrist, because that's what the occultists have been. That's why they've been talking to these aliens for hundreds of years, and they say that they believe that Christianity is the roadblock to them being able to achieve this great work of theirs. Your Blavatskys, your Alice Baileys, Jack Parsons, Aleister Crowleys, they all despise Christianity. Yet, meanwhile, they're out there synthesizing the other religions. Christianity is the problem. And I'm not saying this as a Christian, which I am, but like, to me, like, I'm not the Bible thumping variety that's like, oh, all these other religions are going to hell and you need to find Christ as a salvation. Like, that's just my personal belief, and I try to not let it filter through my work, my research. I'm just being very objective when I say that they have a serious beef with Jesus Christ, okay? Because they think that Christ is the perversion of their true mystery religion. That's what this show, Raised by Wolves, is all about. I'm doing this monster analysis for Raised by Wolves for my podcast. It's about this future world of the cult of Mithra, the Mithraic religion, which is an ancient heretic religion. And that's the future, is this cult of Mithraics versus the atheists, the science religion. So, and you go to Kenneth Grant, right? That's the guy I talked to about earlier about the Typhonian Ordo Templi Orientis, right? And he's the guy who followed Crowley and all this stuff. Well, he says in one of his books, The Magical Revival, that the Golden Dawn, which is just another one of these sort of magic, cults, the Golden Dawn was part of this Brotherhood of Ancient Mystery schools, and they say that it was the inner component to Blavatsky's Theosophical Society, and Blavatsky's intention, and she was very overt about it, she was very clear about it, was the destruction of Christianity, which is, Crowley bought into a lot of Blavatsky stuff, and that's why he identified himself with the formula of the Antichrist, the beast 666. And if you read the Magical Revival, which it's a difficult read, I sort of chopped through it in bits. Kenneth Grant claims that you look at the ancient symbols of their true religion, which this is the common theme in all these occultists. They say the same stuff over and over. That there's the secret true religion, and that the Christian church came along and stole and perverted all of these symbols, and is, Crowley called it the curse of the world. Parsons said, hey, I'm the Antichrist, and I'm here to get rid of the lying hypocrisy of Christianity. And these are the, Parsons, these are the guys that set up NASA, essentially. These are the guys who, not only were they, and this is a huge part of my book, is that science fiction in its golden age is what informed these Antichrist nerds like Jack Parsons and Werner von Braun and these Nazi scientists. They were all influenced by science fiction to pursue contact with the gods through their religion and their fictional entertainment now. And going out to the cosmos, and man needs to go back to the cosmos and all this stuff. Well, science fiction at its roots has occult roots. If you look at, they were first printed on what they call pulp, right? This is the pulp papers. And the guy who came up with the pulp papers that they circulated all these golden age science fiction tales was the founder of the Ordo Templi Orientis. It says it Carl Germer or something like that. L. Ron Hubbard was the king of science fiction too. I mean, it's, then they come up with these fake alien UFO religions and stuff, but like that's not going to make the cut for these people. They don't want an alien religion. They want the Antichrist, the Maitreya, as they oftentimes call it, to be the head of this new global religion. We can dovetail into a million ideas off that, but that's essentially what all of these occultists for hundreds of years have been preaching, practicing, pursuing.
Man, you brought up a really good point earlier, just about how, like, these people are basically trying to basically create this ending that they've been looking for, right? Like, you see that in the Middle East where people are like trying to create the end of days because they're so invested in it happening. You see evangelical Christians doing that by any Jew they find, they put on a plane to Israel, like, because they're just trying to make this end of days happen because they're so invested in it. They put so much into their life that they basically are trying to make it happen, and that's probably what's going on with all these other occult people. Like they've been following this game plan forever because here's this book that laid it all out, and they're doing whatever they can to make it happen. So the end of days happen, and the Antichrist comes. So I totally.
Yeah, they're trying to appeal to man's more basic sort of programming that we seek to, our survival instincts. We want to stay alive. Who doesn't want to not die, right? But they want immortality, right? And that's the theme, is the perfection of man, because, God only took it so far, and through the enlightenment, through the wisdom of Lucifer, they can push it further, and man can become immortal through the ancient wisdom. But these techno nerds, they all buy into this idea of, and you see this in small chunks, right? Like it's constant improvement, and you need this technology to make your life so much better. And technology is great. That's how I'm talking to you right now. I'm not some Luddite Amish guy trying to say don't use technology, but I think it has its limitations, and clearly that's the case. Your Bluetooth disconnects, and you can't reconnect the damn thing. And there's all kinds of examples here, but and that same attitude is what gives you the vaccine idea, right? Since day one of COVID, it's been okay, everyone. You're gonna have to lock down and wear a mask until we get the vaccine rolled out. And I'm thinking the whole time, like, okay, like cool, I get that on some levels. Not that I like buying the vaccine work being, in my vaccine analysis I did, my conclusion was they're kind of safe and kind of effective. But like the same way a gun is kind of loaded, I'm not gonna point it to my head. You know what I'm saying? But these guys, they believe technology is so great, and that's where the idea of the vaccine fits. And I'm thinking the whole time, like, how many months has it been now? 7 months. I haven't heard one peep from any leadership roles of, okay, America, you need to stop eating fast food. You need to start getting healthy. You got to lose 10 pounds. You know what I mean? Like, there's no talk about that. And that's the real key, is to get your immune system beefed up and get healthy. But they don't want that. And that's what my man told me, because I've been sort of arguing, like, hey, let's not throw the mask out altogether, because I don't want the vaccine. If the mask gives me a 5%, 10% reduction in risk, I'm wearing that damn thing, right? I don't want the vaccine. And someone made a very good point to me, and they were like, yeah, but like, since when did all these powers that be really have your health in mind? And it's 100% true, man. Look at our environment is polluted. The air pollution is garbage. The air pollution kills like 80,000 people every year. It's an insane amount, and we don't even make a peep about that. We don't talk about the GMOs and the food. I mean, the corporations run this thing, and
No, you're totally right, dude. And, there was a lot to unpack what you just said. First of all, these tech gods, like, I mean, dude, Burning Man is all about the occult, man. Going there and kissing the ring and engaging into these very dark practices that go on to get you, again, to what you talked earlier about the initiation. This is the big part. I mean, the guys who created Google basically came from Burning Man. That's how they were picked. They showed up and they're like, you want a job? They're like, me? Yeah, boom. And next thing you know, and then they're talking about the old one and stuff like that. 100%. The vaccine, here's my whole thing. I had it, and I don't. And that to me, like, I'll take a vaccine when I'm like, dude, I was walking down the street, 14 people just died on the street. Give me that vaccine. I'll deep throat that fucking, that needle, dude. But I mean, like, until that, it's all about control, man. And here's my whole thing, dude. So much of what's going on is just fear. They just want to scare us because for some reason, it's like what they always say. They just feed off this. It's just so deep and it's so layered to what they're trying to do. But as we wrap this up, Isaac, because I know you don't have much longer, and you did me a giant favor by coming on, so thank you. What is, and I don't know if this takes away from the book, so if you don't want to answer, I totally understand. What is your take on aliens? Are there aliens, or is this all what we're kind of talking about? This kind of just this mental psyop that's been created over time.
Yeah, and that's a tough question, right? And no, there's no, I don't hold anything back from the book. Like, I don't care. I want people to get it, but like, I'd rather than have information and try to clarify this thing because it's such a bizarre topic, right? Here's the thing: nobody knows, right? Nobody knows what the aliens are. Are they here? Or are they not? Are they UFOs? Nobody knows. There's clearly not a very definitive answer to that. But if you ask me, my personal opinion, after researching the occult all these years, there's several things I can say I know for sure. For sure, they've pursued contact with these entities from another dimension. For sure, that's happened, and they claim they've done it. Now, do I believe them? Yes, I do. But like, I could see how some people think, oh yeah, these people are just out of their minds. Okay, sure, but I believe that. I believe they would have given it up by now if they hadn't. And I've done ghost hunting in the past, and I've heard these intelligent things come through the EVP recordings that have no explanation whatsoever.
Really?
Yeah. I've told the story before, but I was at my girlfriend's house doing the EVP when I first started ghost hunting in '99. And
that sounds like a sex position, by the way. I'd give my girl the EVP, dog. He loves it
and we got down with the EVP, right? And we're reviewing it. And we hear this voice. It's like, oh, I forget the name. It said the name. So we asked, like, who is this? What's your name? It tells me the name. And I asked, I'm like, hey, do you know a guy named whatever? And my girlfriend was like, yeah, my grandpa died in the house. And I'm like, oh, shit. Like, this is crazy. And then I had a bunch of weird stuff happen after that. I had weird apparitions. I've had things whisper in my ear, and I stopped messing with all that stuff immediately. This was before the TV shows about it. I hooked up with a dude because I hang out with some weird people sometimes. And this dude was into the ghost hunting world, and I said, what the hell are you talking about, dude? And he broke it down, and I went with him. So anyways, yeah, I believe that they've attempted contact with these things for hundreds of years. That's a fact.
But you believe they exist, though. That's your belief.
Yeah,
there are entities.
100%. I believe there's entities. I believe that science fiction and entertainment and symbolism and archetypes, they all have an influence on reality by influencing our minds. I believe on some levels the ideas of the quantum model of the universe, which suggests that we can, in fact, manifest these things. And I believe that, like I always say, these nerds are going to kill us. These nerds are going to kill us.
They're going to kill us, dude. They're going to kill us. And just if I could talk to the women out there, bang a nerd, save humanity. That's my whole thing. Bang a nerd, dude.
If somebody had just had sex with like Zuckerberg, there's no Facebook today. It doesn't exist. Yeah.
Dude, imagine if Bill Gates got ass. How much better the world would be.
It'd just be Apple. Everybody would have an Apple card. No IBM or no Microsoft. Yeah.
It's just like, dude, it just goes back to the most powerful force in our universe is vagina. It's so powerful that there's only one thing that can take it down, and that's another vagina. That's how powerful it is. Nothing can. Aliens want to bang fucking human ass. If you don't get it, you become Bill Gates and try to give everybody fucking demon fucking vaccines and shit like that. It's very powerful, and that's why women go crazy, because with great power comes great responsibility, and it's like having a vagina is like being Gollum with the ring. It's like it's so powerful, it will drive you fucking cuckoo crazy. So, ladies, my point is, I respect and love you, and I appreciate everything you do.
Then you shouldn't stare at it for too long.
My precious.
Yeah, no, yeah. Can I see your precious? Let me see your precious. Isaac Weissman, one of the best to ever do it. One more time, tell them where they can find your book, where they can find your podcast, and any social media you want them to know.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Thank you. Thank you for having me on. This is one of my favorite shows. I support you on Patreon because I love your show. You can get my podcast for free. It's called Conspiracy Theories and Unpopular Culture on all the places. I've got a Patreon where you get bonus stuff, no ads, all that stuff. It's patreon.com/Illuminati Watcher. The book, Aliens, UFOs, and the Occult, Use Your Illusion 1, is now on Amazon. You can pick it up. My name is Isaac Weishaupt. That's the awesome name on there. Not my real name, by the way. And I've got signed paperbacks on Gumroad, like bubblegum, gumroad.com/Isaac W. I've got the Audible. I narrated the book, right? And it'll be on Audible. It should be here by the end of October. It should be on there live. And yeah, and if you want to follow on Instagram, at Isaac Weishaupt, is where I post my nudes and my yoga pant photos and thongs. You can check all that out.
It's great, dude. He bleaches.
Yeah. It's a nice, you got to put that finishing touch on.
For sure, dude. Isaac, you're the best of the best. I always appreciate you. I still think you should get on Rockfin because I think you do great on there. And maybe your Factor Drama might be good on there. But the point is, you're great. I always appreciate you coming on. Is your woman into all this as well?
Yeah, for sure.
Thank God.
Not as deep and not at first, but yeah, for sure. Yeah, I got a good support system over here.
Well, you're the best, dude. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on. Swarm, I love you very much. Thank you, Johnny. And thank you, Xavier Guerrero, and your new cool haircut. Okay? Appreciate you guys a lot. Guys, thanks so much. We'll see you soon. Thanks for the support.
Oh, what the fuck are you guys talking about? Global controls will have to be imposed, and a world governing body will be created to enforce them.
Shit, well, we go deep, homeboy. Aaron, we're going to find. Drink from the fountain of knowledge. There's lizard people everywhere. That's some interdimensional radio.
Oh, what the fuck are you guys talking about? Global controls will have to be imposed, and a world governing body will be created to enforce them.
Shit, well, we go deep, homeboy. Aaron, open your mind. Drink from the fountain of knowledge. There's lizard people everywhere. That's some interdimensional radio.